Hey everyone, good morning to you. It's Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Gang. If you couldn't tell, well, you could see the logo back here, but if you couldn't tell, we are in Las Vegas continuing our AWS reInvent coverage of reInvent 2025. It's been a great show. You're watching this already on Thursday, so we've had 2 days of coverage here. We hope you've been able to catch them. If you haven't, don't worry. They'll be available on Techstrong TV or the Techstrong TV YouTube channel and OTT channel, probably by early next week or so. But our Crackerjack video team is busy editing these as we're shooting them. So good for that. We've got a good panel of, we got the core panel here, core 3. Used to say the core 4, but that would be the Yankees. Core 3, we've got Mitch Ashley on my far right. Mike Vizard in the middle, and of course, I'm Alan Schimmel. Gentlemen, welcome to the gang. It's great to have you on this morning. So, continuing our, I feel like Sherman marching through Atlanta, continuing our agentic AI campaign through Las Vegas.
True that.
I thought we'd start off with a little Kiro.
Yeah, so we are definitely on the wrong end of the fire hose here, but a lot of stuff coming down the pike from these folks. But Kiro is this AI coding tool that AWS created and is now updating to add something called Kiro Powers, which are basically a set of specialized agents that have been trained to perform specific tasks, including autonomously with hooks and links to an MCP server to call things like Datadog and whatever else do we want to invoke as part of a workflow for the developer. And in a lot of ways, I think, what we're seeing is a lot of shifting further left of various DevOps tasks into the developer, I guess what we might call the inner loop. And what's interesting about all these new AI agents is that it continues a conversation you and I were having yesterday about the fact that they only load when needed. And so they're reducing the total cost of using these AI agents because there's sort of one AI agent that keeps track of what the developer is doing and then automatically invokes these specialized agents when needed. But Mitch, you're closer to this than I am. What's your take on what's going on here with AI coding tools? Because I feel like they're getting a whole lot smarter faster than we thought.
It's the move if you want to use the term agentic DevOps. Basically, we wire these things together now today, whether it's a CI/CD process or plugging in, scanning for vulnerabilities or deploying, whatever it might be, and observability, things like that. And you do see a lot of effort today around hooking in observability, security earlier in the development process. And that's part of what they're doing through these agents. It's also pre-integrated. I mean, the agent knows how to talk to Dynatrace, and you mentioned Datadog. There's others. I think they've been launching with about 6 or 7 companies.
And there's Postman's in there and a bunch of others.
Yeah.
So wait a second, though. I got a question here.
Yes, gentleman in the far left of the room.
So what you're trying to tell me is that we're teaching agentic AI to shift left?
Finally, somebody's shifting left.
Okay. I thought shift left was passé. I thought we went through our shift left period.
Well, now it does bring up an interesting question because just because you can do something doesn't mean people will. So it may wind up just being too overwhelming for somebody to cognitively keep track of because all these things now are happening in parallel. So if I'm writing code and suddenly, an AI agent's popping up going, hey, you want me to run this? Or we need to do this, it's kind of like, well, I think when you're writing code, it's kind of like, even with the help of AI, it's still as much art as it is science. So how much of this stuff winds up just interrupting the flow?
Yeah, very, very, you could get pestered just like pop-ups and notifications and et cetera, I think is your point. Absolutely. Well, it's got to be managed through some kind of a control plane, whether that's inside the IDE. More likely, it's probably part of something like Agent Core, or something's got to orchestrate and control what the agents are doing. I doubt that's going to start that way. I think it's going to start by the developers running, doing their thing, leveraging these agents. They'll build them into their workflows. If they're bothersome, they'll kick them out or make them more useful.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me give you Shimmy's take on this one. So, when you talk to my friends in platform engineering, they tell you one of the reasons that platform engineering rose is because in DevOps, the whole shift left thing just really didn't work. And it didn't work as well as intended because it just put too much on the developer's plate. So by putting too much on the developer's plate, the developer did what developers do, which said, the heck with this, I'm not doing it, right? I want to code. And so we've seen this whole rise of platform engineering to put a platform together to allow the developer to do what he wants to do within the guardrails and policies that we want. So along comes this idea of saying, hey, instead of letting the developer do it, we're going to have an autonomous agentic AI do these tasks. And so the developer won't have to. He could just code, or he or she could just code like they want to. And now we're saying, wait a second, this thing is going to be a PIA. It's just going to pop up and do all of that. You don't think the developer is going to say the same thing and say, this is a PIA. I'm not going to pay attention to it.
I think there's going to be some balance in that equation, but I also think, it goes back to what we were talking about a couple of days ago with AWS. They clearly think that they are going to be the platform engineering team for the developers. And so they're more than just an infrastructure provider in their minds. They're saying we're going to provide various types of DevOps AI agents, and they are going to be the manager of the DevOps workflow and the platform engineering team for all these developers out there. And that's how they're starting to think of DevOps as more of a managed service rather than something that a bunch of software engineers are trying to support on behalf of 100 developers. They're kind of inserting themselves into that process. Is that how you see it?
I think so. I do see it that way. And I think you skipped a step, which is the developers are the people who experiment with things, right? Maybe platform engineers do, but developers definitely do. Not all of them, but most are. They'll get on, they'll try these agents, they'll see what's useful, but they'll get to a point where they say, okay, now the hassle factor, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Can someone take this? And then now that we have platform engineering, I don't think it has to be, the sysadmin who runs the build, who can take this. It's the platform engineering team can work with the development team and say, all right, you guys try this stuff out, see what's helpful. We'll make sure it's wired the right way into our tool set. And we'll keep the things that are helpful to us. But I think your point also is correct of AWS has to figure out how to compete with GitHub, How do we provide not just the tool to write code? How do we create an environment for creating software and agents, integrating all these things? We've got all the rest of the infrastructure from, hardware all the way up to databases and security. And let's start to build an environment you can really kind of pre-integrate these things together.
My problem with it is you can't please all the people all the time. We all can't be right here. One of us is wrong.
Well, clearly it's... Thanks for stepping up, Alan.
No, I'm not admitting to anything. I know nothing. But
love it. He's such a giving guy. He's really just taking...
But here's the thing. When I talk about platforms and platform engineering, when platform engineering first came out and we talked about platforms, if you managed your Kubernetes, you were a good platform engineer, right? You had a nice Kubernetes workflow. You had your CI/CD pipeline cooking, and wow, you're a genuine platform engineer. And then a funny thing happened. Platform engineering shifted focus to IDPs. Right, internal developer platforms, backstage, and its ilk. Are you saying that these Kiro agents, these agentic AI agents that Amazon's coming, are going to form a new IDP? They're going to run in the existing IDP backstage or what have you? Because is that really where we want them there, or are they after the fact? Because if we want them in the IDP and they're generating the code and they're doing all of these things, we are fundamentally changing the role of the developer. The developer becomes less the person who develops code and more the person who's going to manage the agents who develop code.
Yes.
That is.
I'm asking my developers out there, raise your hand if that's what you want your job to be.
So hold on a minute before we jump fully off the bridge. Let's stop about halfway down. So here's where we
It's
are.
un-American, and I won't stand for it.
That's where we're going to march. If we're let's protest. I mean, look at what's happened so far. We've gone from the every tech executive in the world saying, yeah, we don't need developers anymore because I can build a snake game on my computer, right? We don't need people to write software. Where are all the tools that are coming out? They're tools for developers to use AI to build software. So are you going to write less code? Hey, I'm happy not to write all the code if it's for good code. I'm happy not to write every piece of code if I know it's going to work and not cause me more work, right? As AI gets better at doing these tasks, generating some of the code, doing code reviews. Now it has to be done in a way, it can't be the intrusion prevention of work system,
Right.
like we saw with IDSs and IDPs. But developers do these things anyway already. They already orchestrate work. They already work on design. They already craft software. They write code, but that's actually a small part of what they do.
The 80% of what they were doing that's not writing code is all this stuff.
Yes.
So we're trying to automate that while they're sitting there. But your point is well taken, right? Because on the other side of it, developers are going to pick or have a lot of influence over which of these AI coding tools that they're going to use. And some of these decisions may be made by, a CIO who's going to sit there and say, this is our standard, folks, and this is what you're going to use.
And that definitely happens.
Right. And then there's going to be folks who are going to, where the developer has more influence over which tool they're going to want to use. And they may like OpenAI or Microsoft or whatever it is, or Anthropic's coding tools better for some reason. And then there'll probably be some middle ground between turning on every platform engineering AI agent there is and me wanting to be comfortable automating a couple of functions like observability of my code as I'm writing it versus still relying on a platform engineering team. So I don't think that this is, an either or. It's a spectrum of things that will vary widely depending on the nature of the organization using it.
So it's a spectrum.
It is a spectrum.
Well, we know developers.
Does that have anything to do with vaccines?
No, but as we have noted on this show many times, we are all on the spectrum.
Yes, we are. So I appreciate the conversation. Let me bring this home to a business conclusion. We spoke yesterday about, to a certain degree, and I spoke about it last night with Daniel Newman. We think we recorded that, yes. This reInvent has been a big pivot for AWS because the perception was they were trailing Google and Microsoft in AI. And they came out guns a-blazing with AI all the time, all AI all the time. You said something before about Microsoft. You haven't mentioned Google. Google had a great week last week in the stock market, right? Yeah. Because I think the market recognizes that Google may have the best vertically and horizontally integrated stack among the hyperscalers. They have it all. Microsoft has some great tools though too. They have GitHub.
They have
in their back pocket.
150 million of their
right, and they always had a great developer channel before GitHub even.
Exactly.
But they've got GitHub, they've got Azure. They have the OpenAI relationship as well as their own Copilot AI things.
They also own the enterprise.
And they own the enterprise. Formidable competition here. Now, AWS, look, developers built the AWS that we see here today. There's no doubt. They were developers love to whip out their credit card and open up instances on AWS. But they didn't have a GitHub analog. They don't have Google's stack.
Yep. Agreed.
And so what AWS is doing here is this is their claim to a stack, or at least the beginning of an AWS stack that'll run on Trainium processors as well as on NVIDIA. And they'll have an analog to a GitHub or some sort of developer IDP. And they love open source. They can take backstage.
Yeah. And they'll go one step further. They'll say that rather than just focusing on Gemini or OpenAI, they're going to say,
you can plug anything in Bedrock.
You can plug anything you want in here, and we will automatically optimize the right AI model for the job based on the cost and the level of accuracy that you want, and it will just be something I tune rather than something that I decide that I'm going to be like all in on OpenAI or I'm going to be all in on Gemini 3.
And they're not completely out of the model game. They have the Nova models. I'm not saying that's
They're right. They have Nova.
where the others are, but hey, they're at least attempting to make a play in that. We'll see
but
what
they're
it looks
also
like.
giving you the ability through Nova Forge to make your own models to a certain extent.
But
So crazy like a fox.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day, though. It's going to be, Nova's kind of like, the generic version of the prescription drug, right? It's does enough, and it's cheaper, and it's
the AWS way. It's the AWS way. 80% for 20%.
right. And
It is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
And we're gonna talk a little bit more about Nova in our next segment.
All right, let's take a break on Techstrong Gang. We'll be right back.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
So we are going to shift the gear here a little bit because AWS is talking about making it simpler to retrain AI models and also customize them. So the retraining is a function of Bedrock where they're kind of streamlining that whole process so that I don't have to have a PhD to go fix the AI model. And I can fix the AI model on two parameters. One is I can make it more accurate, or I can also make it less costly. And so they're trying to make the whole play simpler for mere mortals, or I wouldn't call it everybody, but we're getting past the point where I need a data scientist to do all this stuff. And what was interesting to me about this particular capability is that it shows up first on Nova models, oddly enough, and then it's going to show up on all this other stuff later. So they're starting to send a signal that says that maybe Nova is not just an also-ran, it's going to be like their preferred platform, and then everything else we'll see later on other models at some point. And then they're also talking about within SageMaker, which is their managed servers for building AI apps, that they're going to add some ability to have a serverless capability for customizing the models. So you get a little more granular control over today what is pretty much, a take it or leave it kind of approach to building out an AI model. And I think that's a fair assessment of what they're talking about and thinking about doing.
Good coverage of it.
From your perspective, as you look at all that, are we kind of getting closer to the democratization of the building of AI models so that I don't need to have a whole bunch of data scientists to do every little thing? Because that seems to be the gating factor in my mind. I can't find enough of those people, and they're expensive, and they work for me for 6 months and somebody steals them.
Well, there's a duality here, which is bring your AI, bring your models. We'll use whatever and you, of course, you can use our Nova, our AWS Nova models. On the other hand, what they're doing with Forge is bring your data and train our models, your instance of it, if you will, on your data rather than doing everything through an MCP access, right? Well, what does that create? I'm not going to move Nova over to somebody else's service. I'm going to run that in AWS. There's stickiness right there. I think that's the brilliant move behind not just making it more, lowering the bar to be able to train models yourself and not have to be a genius.
I love a duality, Mitch.
I'm all about the duality. So I looked that word up.
Back to
it's my word of the day. It was on my.
I learned about duality in St. John's in a theology class.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Light and dark and all of the Zoroastrianism.
I wasn't doing the evil good thing, but
No, but there's a duality. But here's the, I guess for me, the crux of it. With this Forge tool, I'm not looking to create a model that's going to take on Anthropic or Open or any of this. To me, Forge, when we did our hackathon almost 2 years ago, on operationalizing AI, and we had all those really smart people, a lot of brain power in that room. It was clear to me listening to them that large frontier LLMs were not the answer for everything. They're good for consumers to play around with and do a lot of things, and maybe for marketing and analyst people, but not for everything. And we were going to need small language models, right? SLMs. We were going to, and back then they would, Patrick and John and those folks were doing vector databases to introduce.
Just the beginning of that for MCP and what became MCP.
MCP. RAG, stuff like this. So to me, is Forge a better mousetrap to build my SLM? And then do I maybe plug that into Bedrock and I still have an OpenAI or a frontier model behind it?
I think we're going to go back to the word spectrum. So there's 4 tiers to this thing, right? I can build a foundational model a la OpenAI and all those things. Then I can
But
use...
you really can't.
I know, but I'm just saying as the spectrum. That's the top end of the world. Then you use Forge to build your own foundational model. You're not really building a SLM with that. You're building, and it's for global 2,000 companies that are going to build a fairly large model. Then there's all these tools underneath in Bedrock that I can use to, I don't have to be as big an expert, and I'm going to use those to build SLMs, and I'm going to use those to kind of make that more accessible to a broader number of people. And then underneath that is SageMaker, which is kind of this total managed service where I just basically show up and describe what it is that I want done, and SageMaker will automatically generate it for me. And they're all kind of like on a different set of classes of things. And
Like Skittles in the rainbow.
I guess, yeah.
Taste the rainbow.
Yeah, it gets a little complicated, but from their point of view, there are different classes of companies using different levels of AI.
So there I got to disagree with you. I think companies will use different classes. It's not this class goes to that company.
Yeah.
One company in one instance may want to use the Forge or Nova, but at another instant or in another instance or in another team or at another juncture, that we don't need that right now. I just need the SageMaker thing.
This is true.
Right. And I think that's what we got to understand is this is not, as AI continues to develop, this is not a one size fits all, and it's not, I just need a one solution. I need the whole spectrum.
Well, the analogy I would use is if you're not a frontier model company, which AWS is not at the level, of course, of a OpenAI or Anthropic, what do? You sell people. You're an arms dealer, you're a picks and shovel dealer, you're selling the tools, right? And I think that's to your point about the spectrum of depending on what you want to do, how invested you want to be in creating your own models versus using models versus customizing access to them. That's the strategy here.
Yeah. I got a question regarding chip usage in this spectrum, though. As we go to that on that spectrum from left to right, from ultraviolet to infrared, where do I need my GPUs and where do these Trainium chips fit in?
It remains to be seen because, right now, I think most people are using Trainium as an alternative for inference engines. I can, though, AWS is talking about Trainium 4 here, which, right now doesn't exist. It's just a piece of paper with some specs on it.
But you're right, but let's be fair. They came out with Trainium 2. They said, we're coming out with Trainium 3, and they did.
Yeah. So the point is, I think a significant portion of the AI training will move to AI accelerators, and for 2 simple facts. One is GPUs are more expensive, and 2 is GPUs have a lot of code in there for graphics that have squat to do with AI, and they're not the most efficient way to do that. And they only happily, accidentally wound up being the platform for AI because they existed. And somebody went, well, that's the best thing for training in parallel, so here we go. But if we have processors that are designed for the task specifically, and it's not just Trainium, there's a small army of these things starting to show up. More and more of those training and inference sets are going to wind up on things other than GPUs, and they're going to be less costly to run. They're going to consume less energy, and it's going to have an interesting impact on stock valuations.
I think it's all about economics and availability. I mean, that's the game right now, right?
Yeah.
If you can provide an alternative, maybe it's not as fast, maybe it's not as quite as cutting edge as some things about NVIDIA. Yeah. On the other hand, the other thing they did with the training environment is they open sourced the SDK. They came out with an SDK for that. To fight against basically the non-open source version of what NVIDIA does with their SDK. So there's another attraction.
I thought NVIDIA's SDK is open.
I don't think it's open source. I'll double check, but I don't believe it's open source.
I think it's not within a consortium, but I believe like large aspects.
It's not a Linux Foundation thing,
right.
But it's open.
It could be. Maybe it is.
Because I see CUDA libraries showing up in other products.
CUDA is definitely open.
Yeah, so there's pieces of that are probably open, but it's just a question of who's open and who's writing all the code.
My feeling though is this: if you're AWS, every time you got to write those big checks over to Jensen, you wince a little bit, right?
Jensen was here doing the thing, man. But
they're partners.
Yeah,
they're partners. That makes no difference, right? I mean, what's his name? Who wrote the Art of War? Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu. Your partner could be your competitor too, right?
It's true.
So they're partners, but every time they write them a check, they don't think to themselves, well, I'd like that money staying right here.
Yeah, of course.
And so it would be ludicrous and naive. Who's naive now? To think that they're not going to put their thumb on the scale and say, oh no, this is a job for a Trainium, not a Blackwell or something like that. And quite frankly, look, Google's going to do the same thing.
Now, interestingly enough, the thing they're swimming against is that there's a certain amount of good old-fashioned marketing mojo behind NVIDIA these days, and you go talk to data science teams, and they're like, I absolutely have to have the latest, greatest GPUs. And frankly, they're not really thinking about like what are the cost implications of that. They just want the latest, greatest as well.
Greatest.
Or like my career path is being trained on Cisco, right? So, but I'm in this case being trained on NVIDIA.
Well, everyone it's FOMO. It's a little bit of a bokeh thing. You all want that kind of thing. Again, I had this conversation last night with Daniel Newman about this, which is, at least for the foreseeable future, NVIDIA will probably stay a generation or maybe two in performance out ahead of the Trainiums and the Google chips and the Broadcoms and what have you. But as much as the developer wants to be on that latest and greatest and the data scientist wants to be on the latest and greatest, if the price gap is wide enough, I'm sorry, right?
And if I can run it on my desktop, I'm even happier.
And happier, exactly.
Right, because ultimately a CFO and a CEO will sit there and look at the IT guy and go, excuse me, you want to do what for how much?
Yeah. And that's where I think to a certain extent AWS may be betting on that, and they're not alone. I think Google is too, and I think you're going to see Microsoft do it. I think Meta was going in that direction, though things seem to have gotten a little rocky over there.
I hear the phrase token sticker shock a lot.
Yeah. And that again though, what's interesting is this is all part of this continuing evolution that we're going through with this, and we'll see how it shakes out. But we're going to shake out with a break right here, come back and talk about our third segment from AWS reInvent on Techstrong Gang.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions, your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you. including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface, your personal life.
All right, folks, we're back with our third and final segment of the day from AWS reInvent, and we're talking about Strands, which is this software development kit that AWS open sourced earlier this year, and now they're adding support for TypeScript to this. And it's basically an SDK for building AI agents, and it makes that whole process a lot simpler. Now, the other thing that they were talking about was related to AI agents too, was they now have a tool that will help automate the building of the UI for the AI agent, which is, the AI agent still has to have something that looks like a user interface on it. And that's not something that everybody's very good at, so they're providing some tools to automate that process as well. They were talking, and we discussed a couple of days ago, we're talking about billions and billions of Carl Sagan AI agents that we're supposed to be building and deploying. Right now, that feels like a fairly manual process, maybe? Or so is that whole thing going to become automated, and what does that look like?
Well, you said the word TypeScript, which is code, right? So we're coding agents today. End users aren't. I mean, in our Google workspace, right, when using Flow, that we're not writing code to do that. We're using a UI to do it. But to do what developers need to do, they write code. It's just that sophisticated. The Strands SDK, what it does is basically build around models. So it's all about the prompt and getting the model that you're accessing and making it really simple to create an agent to go do that. It's the things that it's the framework that the developers have to go build if they're going to write it from scratch, right? So you don't have to do that. If you contrast to like what Microsoft announced, they announced their agent framework about 2 months ago or so. That's about orchestration. So companies are tackling different parts of this, right? The Strands doesn't do orchestration. That's part of Bedrock and what we're looking for that to do. So people are working at the pieces of it. But I think if you back up for a minute and say, oh, there's a couple of new SDKs that AWS came out. Sounds a lot like a development company to me. Company telling developers, back to our first conversation. In other words, one more thing saying we're trying to recapture the developer persona to come be on our platform, use our tools.
And they made it open source out of the gate, so they definitely have a plan to make this thing as broadly available as possible.
Well, that addresses the lock-in. You can't claim lock-in then.
And now they're also talking about using that tool to build AI agents that will be deployed at the edge, including for robotics applications, which has been the hot topic of AI as a
physical AI you're talking about.
Right.
That's the one that's going to eliminate poverty, jobs,
among other things. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all into Star Trek.
And might someday be the final killer app for WASM that we've been waiting for now for about 4 or 5 years.
Akamai will be happy. Right?
Well, that's what's going to do it.
Did you know Akamai bought?
Yeah.
It was interesting. They made a bet on WASM.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, and forgive me. I'm not quite as up on this, but are we saying that AI agents will create AI agents?
Yes, absolutely. AI is going to write its own code at some point.
And
at some point. In the short term, it's still going to, most of them are going to be built by good old-fashioned human developers, but eventually an AI agent will be able to.
So would that be some sort of self-replication?
Be polymorphic code, basically.
Yeah, polymorphic, self-replicating
code writing code. Could be changing its own code. Could be writing other agents in real time.
Sounds odd-like to me.
It sounds like a worm to me, but what do I know?
Or a virus. Definitely could do that.
I guess it all depends on your outlook. I'm looking for God. They're looking for bacteria and viruses and worms.
It's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum. There's the spectrum for you right there.
But there is theoretically, something could go wrong where something starts spawning AI agents out of, hundreds of these things, and then you got to go clean them up somewhere. But I imagine there'll probably be an AI agent for cleanup too.
Be the mop-up agent, or
Well, don't they have those in Zion?
It's in
The Matrix.
Yeah, what do they call them? I can't remember.
Right.
They're like the octopusy looking things that
The Sentry agents.
Yeah. And the agents may even have a set time life, right? And they're just going to self-destruct after 6 months and be replaced by another AI agent.
I got to tell you, I'm just so damn proud of myself that I was able to get a Matrix one in here. Thank you, Agent Smith.
Well, that's because you think we already in Matrix.
Right. Well,
This is really-
I won't lie to you. There are days I do. Red pill, blue pill. Guys, you know what? Let's tie a bow on this. It's been a really eventful reInvent, right? Look, usually, you come here to reInvent and AWS is just gurgitating out one release and announcement after the next. And it probably takes you 3 months to digest all of it and kind of make heads or tails. This isn't that different. They put out a ton of stuff, but it is so focused and it make it so obvious, right, that this is where their attention is right now.
Yeah, they probably have 1,000 other things going on, but what they chose to highlight here shows a narrative, and there's a thought process as to how all this is playing out. I'm not sure that, other companies aren't doing the same thing, and in fact, I suspect that they all are. But it's interesting to me that AWS is getting better at articulating the mission and how all the piece parts come together, and doing it, frankly, in a way that is better than the other companies that I've seen so far.
There are some, like, trying to weave it together. What does this mean? How does this work together? Because it isn't all being introduced at once, right? It's a lot of parts. So sometimes it's obvious, like, okay, this is clearly what they're doing. Other times it's not quite sure. Whether it's AWS, Microsoft, Google, whoever it is.
Agreed. Hey, we've got one more Techstrong Gang that we're going to record out here for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So very excited by that. We'll continue the conversation. But for now, I think we're going to wrap it up. We've got Mitch. I know you've got a ton of briefings to do. And
All day.
we got stuff happening. So until later or until tomorrow, that's going to wrap up our Techstrong Gang coverage. But hey, we've got a full day of live coverage I'll be doing here at our Techstrong Studios at AWS reInvent high atop the tower here at the Wynn. And stay tuned for that. But until then, on behalf of Mitchell and Mike and myself, have a great day, everyone. Enjoy our coverage. We're out.
Google just announced Gemini 3 progressing from understanding to thinking to action with their frontier AI model. This includes Nana Banana image generation, anti-gravity coding assist. What should we make of Gemini 3 apart from their use of crazy code names? We also discuss in-browser AI and coding assistance, as well as news from Microsoft Ignite, including Fabric IQ, Work IQ, and Foundry IQ on this episode of Utilizing AI. Welcome to Utilizing AI, the weekly podcast focused on practical applications of artificial intelligence from the Futurum Group. Each episode brings together diverse perspectives to explore news and new use cases for the ways in which AI is transforming enterprise IT and the industries it serves. I'm your host, Stephen Foskett, president of the Tech Field Day business unit here at the Futurum Group. Before we dive into the discussion, let's meet who's on the panel today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brad Shimon. And Stephen, thanks for having me. I'm an analyst with the Futurum Group looking at data intelligence, analytics, and infrastructure. And I'm an unapologetic believer in all things AI. So bear that in mind as we go.
And I'm Nick Patience. I'm the AI platforms practice lead here at Futurum. I've been looking at AI for 25, almost 26 years now. I agree with Brad. I am an unapologetic supporter of AI as well.
And I'm Stephen Foskett. I guess I'm the designated skeptic here. Now, I'm unapologetically enjoying and using it. In fact, I did some really cool stuff with it this week. But I am a little skeptical of the business model and and financials of the whole thing. But we'll get to that. Not on this episode, though, because we've had actually some new announcements this week. Key among those, of course, is Gemini 3 from Google. And I was thrilled to see that, a little bit of inside baseball here. Google actually made this announcement in a university setting. And the first official discussion of it was with a bunch of young people who are just getting into the industry. And I love that vibe. I also really enjoy Gemini. I've been using Gemini as my sort of go-to engine for a while now, just sort of to get stuff done during the day, along with, of course, Apple Intelligence. And Gemini 3, at least so far, looks like it works. It's like Gemini, but better. I guess, Nick, let's throw this to you first. What's your initial impression of Gemini 3?
Yeah, I agree. It is Gemini, but better. You'd expect it to be better, after all. That is the kind of point. The way they pitched it to me recently was sort of the Gemini 1 family was about understanding. Gemini 2 family was about thinking, and the Gemini 3 family is about action. So taking action. So this is where agentic and comes in, but it's obviously still reasoning model and all that kind of stuff. And I think some of the stuff that was pretty interesting was the Nano Banana being part of it. And there's been some really interesting images going around, actually interesting images right now from an enterprise AI point of view, not the usual stuff that we see of astronauts riding bicycles and things like that, but actually more its ability to create images that are useful in presentations, not necessarily presentations themselves, although it's probably getting there. And also, this kind of advanced planning capabilities and things like that. I've been digging into it a little bit. We're a kind of Google shop here at Futurum, so we've been using it a lot, as we all have, I know. But I think it's really interesting, and there's also there's other things around it. Maybe Brad want to talk about the anti-gravity and that came as part of it as well.
Yeah, it's a fascinating release for a lot of reasons, like Nick just mentioned. And it's funny, isn't it? It seems that now we have a cadence. Every year in early December, we get together and talk about all of the new groundbreaking, what do we call those? Frontier scale models that come out. And so I'm just waiting for the next DeepSeek to roll out before the end of the year. I'm sure it'll happen. But for Gemini, I find it interesting for a couple of reasons. First, to touch on the Nano Banana facet. Best name ever, by the way.
I'm sorry. Can we just take a moment here and say,
yes.
Did you have Nano Banana and anti-gravity on your bingo card this week?
Right in the center, yeah.
I mean, what's with that? Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Brad. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you mentioned, Stephen, with rolling it out in with younger people and those in research in particular, because Google has really shown in this year that amongst the U.S.-based model makers that it is right there with Anthropic in terms of bleeding edge, leading edge innovation. So I get that a lot, and Nano Banana is a good reflection of that because, like Nick mentioned, it's not just about funny images. It's actually like if you're working in the enterprise and you're working to build software or maintain or manage software, think about what it means to have an image generation model that can actually output, correct syntax, correct grammar, correct English or whatever language, labeling for a very complex diagram of something, let's say, all the way down to wiring or nano chip design, even. I say, I don't think that's out of the question, but think about what that means. If you can, instead of having to pivot over to a CAD CAM design, you can actually just have generative AI create a design that's consumable by software itself, other AI agents, or just software. That's amazing. Think about it like at a really high level, just for building software. If you can actually create an interface that is, not just a sketch, but an actual, workable interface that can be broken apart by the model and built as software. That's amazing to me. So I think there's a lot of practicality with Nano Banana. The second thing that I want to touch on really quick is that, we all need to bear in mind that it's not cheap or easy or fast to develop these frontier scale models, and that Gemini 3 is not actually a new model. Like Nick mentioned, this is all about tool use and refinements to an existing foundation. Meaning, like, if you look at the date that the model says I was last trained on, like when the cutoff is for its knowledge within the corpus it was trained on, it's the same as 2.5, the end of 2024. So it's not an entirely new model. It's just doing a lot more with what it already had, and it is a lot more. I've experienced this as a practitioner working with Gemini daily, as a coding agent within Gemini CLI. That the biggest frustration I had with 2.5 was that it would run home to mama every chance it got in terms of coming up with API calls for its own models that were from 2024. And so you're coding in the middle of 2025 and on. You're like, why are you doing this? And it's because the corpus was trained on that. Well, they've actually made the model much better at not just using like MCP servers to do this, but actually better at being able to sort of see the context of what you're working in, so that it uses correct API calls. So I appreciate that about it a lot. And if I could just say one caveat also that I found with working with Gemini 3 is that it's not very chatty. I miss that. I liked 2.5 because it did do some glazing now and again, like, oh gosh, how did you come up with that great question? But you could look beyond that and instead really enjoy the fact that it would share with you some of its thinking and reasoning tokens about how it arrives at, oh, this is what I meant to do. This is what I need to do. This was a dead end. I tried this and it worked. You don't get that with 3. It's just all down to business, and the business is pretty good. So I guess I can take that as an acceptable downgrade.
That's pretty interesting. It's kind of like seeing a band where the lead singer doesn't talk between the songs. It's just the songs. That's all you're going to get.
That's right. Ozzy Osbourne without the screaming to
exactly.
clap.
Exactly. I think it's interesting where we sit at the moment. This week, 2 days ago, it was ChatGPT's 3rd birthday, and how far we've come, and how also, thinking back earlier this year, I can't really put an exact point on it, but somewhere in Q1 where, after DeepSeek came out in January and other things happened and OpenAI carried on its march, how Google was apparently doomed. And the ad search business was going to completely fall apart. And here we are, as Brad said, in December. And of the hyperscalers, I think it's fair to say it's looking like the one that's currently in the lead in terms of AI, from the chips to everything, to the apps at the top of the stack, and all, of course, everything in between, which is where the real meat and potatoes is. But I think it's it's in a really interesting position.
Yeah, you can't count Microsoft out on that, but man, Google is doing everything right in the AI stack. It seems they have really solid models. We should probably also talk about anti-gravity versus Cursor, because Cursor 2.0 just came out with a lot of the same features, and anti-gravity is right there. But it is really interesting that Google is able to develop really solid, useful tools, get them out there to customers. I wonder about the financials of it, but I suspect, given what Nick just mentioned with Google's own silicon that they're using here, that those may not be as all that bad either. And that we may be seeing the emergence of a really solid offering here. One of the things, Brad, that I want to react to is one of my greatest frustrations with dealing with LLMs is the sort of compounding chaos that you get when you're trying to work with an LLM, because I don't just throw something at it and say, give me a result. I like to try to iterate over that and say, okay, that's good, but now this. And what I found, especially with the OpenAI models, is that it tends to spiral. it tends to compound and you get just absolutely bananas, sorry, Google, results, especially when it came to ChatGPT's image generation. It would really just go off a cliff after 4 or 5 images, and you'd end up with something that just was completely wrong. And I would have to basically say, forget this, let's go back to the start and try that all again. So far, I haven't experienced that as much in Gemini 3. And I'm curious if you all, first off, have you experienced this, or am I just inept? And second off, is this something that's getting better?
Yes,
no, you're
and
totally
no.
right. You're totally right. I mean, that spiraling of images to the fact that you completely reset and say, this is all completely useless, let's start again. Or often what you end up doing in those situations is going to another, going to Claude or going somewhere else and just trying something and then getting frustrated and then building the slide yourself from scratch. But I think it's, I think these things are, they are, I mean, I guess the thing is, we're always told they're only going to get better, but they do get better, but they get better when the next version comes out. And so, because because I always say your stuff is not being used to retrain that model. And, obviously, as Brad talked about earlier, the cutoff date proves that it's not being retrained. So, you do kind of have to wait for the new version. But I think it's, I was actually playing with the new Claude Optus 4.5 earlier today, and it's the first one I found that actually, I mean, talking from an analyst building slides a lot, so there's a very kind of narrow point of view. It's the first one that actually built a slide. A proper one, a PowerPoint slide. I mean, what we use Google Sheets, but in PowerPoint format, that it was actually good and all the words were correct on it, and and all those kind of things. So I think, in terms of personal productivity, for me, that's huge. But I think the image stuff is, it's always the first thing to be publicized, isn't it? Because everybody wants to, put out all the silly stuff. But I think it's going to be really, really useful in all sorts of, the creative industries, but also, everybody else who's not a creative professional but is a knowledge worker of any kind.
Yeah, very true. The first thing I always use these models for is to work on designs, airbrush designs for my 1970s panel van, the ones with the little half moon windows in the back.
How many panel vans do you got now, Brad? It's the same for all use cases for these, whatever, if it's a multimodal or reasoning or just a use trains. I'm trying to think of the word now. Sorry, a basic chat response model. It doesn't matter. It's the same because we're getting better at how we handle context windows, how big they can be, and we're getting better at the attention mechanisms we have that tell the model how to work with the content it sees in those. And so, like you're describing, Stephen, the challenge often when you're working with these, and this is especially the case for agentic development, is that the further you get into a session, the less likely you are to end up where you thought you were going to go. And it's like, I kind of think of it, it's a human. It's the same as a human being in terms of fatigue sets in, confusion sets in, conflicting ideas set in, waiting sets in. Like, well, what's the most important thing in this huge context window? Oh my goodness, how do you know that? And so, and I say this, Nick's probably sick of hearing me talk about it because we do internally all the time, and that is that it's not about prompt engineering. It's all about context engineering. You really have to be very careful about how you put data in front of a model in the context of what you're asking it to do. Because, the more we work with these, the more I have found that, we ask more of them, and therefore they do less until the next iteration, next Christmas comes around. So you kind of have to, be very cautious about how you use them. For me, like working agentically for software development, my best friend is the /compress command to take everything I've been everything that's gone into that conversation and compress it down. Two things that does. First is it saves me a ton of money. And the second is it keeps the model from going off the rails or less likely to go off the rails. The other is simply just cut it off, just clear the cache, clear the memory, and start over, because there are limits. The more we ask of these, the less they're able to do, honestly, until we figure out how to do it better. Yeah, the frustrating thing for me is, when you're in there and, you literally will say, okay, keep this part the same and fix this other thing. And I've experienced this with coding assistants, I've experienced this with writing, and I've experienced this with image generation, like crazy with image generation. You'll say, like, okay, I like that part, keep that the same. Now let's modify this other part. And somehow it will change that part too. And with coding assistants, that can be especially pernicious because you can find that the function that was working and that you got done with before is suddenly off the rails again. Has anyone tried Coding Assistant with Gemini 3 anti-gravity? I guess
I have.
Have you?
I've spent some time with it. And I wasn't actually that anxious to use it because I'm not a fan of Electron, and I really loathe the VS Code. Because it's really just JavaScript with plugins all day long. I like something like Zed that's sort of purpose built to be a code, an IDE. And anyway, but my preferences aside, I was very surprised at just how good it was at getting to an outcome. That outcome. If I say a very simple prompt, make me a Pomodoro timer. It will just set up my environment, get everything in order, like an actual, like good working order, not just half, witted sort of, a POC that you would not want to share with anyone because you'd be too embarrassed to show them, but actually good coding practices to get there. But I just don't, it's not something that I think is fully baked yet, and it's got a long ways to go. And I think it also opens up a lot of potential issues for us because of its use of what we have come to know as browser use or computer use, where models are given the ability to work with your system itself. I mean, with these coding agents, we already give them access to RM / tilde tilde RM, to delete everything. But it's like that with, you're just handing the reins over to the horse and saying, take me home or drag me through trees. Let's go for the former. Okay.
You got a lot of metaphors in there. First off, I think you're going to have to use Nano Tomato to design the UI for your Pomodoro timer. Also, fully baked pasta is delicious, especially with Pomodoro. And we actually went down to Amish country this weekend here in Ohio, and the horse absolutely can take you home when you're drunk in the middle of the night.
That is a dangerous practice, sir.
But I'd let you know. But Nick, let's talk about coding and browser use. I think browser use is one of those things that people are a little shy about.
Yeah, I mean, do you mean shy about admitting they're using it, or shy about or wanting to actually get started with it? Yeah, I think,
do I really want to turn my browser over to Gemini?
Yeah, and I guess they're all pushing you. Perplexity's pushing you, and they're all pushing OpenAI's all pushing you to do that. Yeah, there's obviously these kind of core security risks of the kind of the kind of indirect prompt injection and things like that. I think it's interesting, because we're kind of back to the 90s again, aren't we? With browser wars. I think we're all old enough to remember Netscape and IE and all the others that were around. I think I think there's going to be I think it's going to be pushback on the corporate level anyway, and corporate IT on those kind of things. I mean, there's only so much shadow AI you can get away with in a large corporation. I mean, smaller companies, then I think people will. I mean, obviously the switching costs then become so high, don't they? Because if you're investing in, if that becomes your browser, and obviously that becomes incredibly sticky, that's obviously why the vendors want to do it. So you just don't, like we've been discussing earlier, you don't just go, well, I'm not going to use that image generator anymore, I'm going to jump over here and use this one. But I think at the moment we're still very, very early in how effective this stuff is, which is we've just talked about for the last 15 minutes, that people will not probably want to commit to, I'm only going to go down this road because as it's impressive as say, Gemini 3 is, there'll be another state-of-the-art model along in a minute. And so, you want to try it, surely. And so I think it's, I think people are going to want to be more flexible for a while yet.
Yeah, I feel like we're entering a new phase with development in particular. That it's not, with agentic development in particular. You remember how we were talking about vibe coding that Karthy came up with last year, and vibe coding is now just AI coding, or just even coding. We're moving very rapidly toward new ways of building software in the enterprise, and as we do that, like Nick is saying, you've only got so much tolerance for risk in the enterprise, and you don't go beyond that. And if shadow AI is threatening it, it gets locked down pretty quick. So these tools are evolving rapidly to really match those requirements. And I've seen it with some interesting recent agentic tooling like we had, and I just cannot believe this name. I'm not going to say better than Nano Banana, but on par with Nano Banana, and that is Bob from IBM. Bob is an IDE built for agentic development. And Bob likes literate programming, if you've ever heard of that, and also spec-driven development. And those two things together, those two ideas are really informing the maturation of coding with agentic tools right now. And
I can't believe that Microsoft let the trademark on Bob lapse, so IBM picked it up.
That because it was such a success. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but so tell us more about that, Brad. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an old idea. As we've been talking about it. It's old ideas come around, old problems come back around, and I think we'll talk about those in a minute with Microsoft. But back in the 70s, a guy named Knuth with a K came up with this idea of literate programming, where you could mix natural instructions for the program with actual code, and sort of treat that as a paradigm for developing software that was useful for both humans and machines. And what we kind of came up with from that was what everyone that's into data science knows so fondly as Jupyter Notebooks. Not directly, but indirectly, it sort of led to that idea, I'm saying. And that is now evolving and maturing in tools like Bob to sort of prioritize the thing that all developers hate the most, which is documentation and explaining their code. And as we have discovered over the last few years, what are these tools really good at? These agentic, LLMs really good at? They are really good at parsing long strings of data, making sense of it, and documenting it for us. So ideas like literate programming kind of make your agentic experience, like I was talking about with Gemini CLI and the non-chatty version of Gemini. It makes it into a sort of how do I put this? Sort of like self-documenting software development, in which you can have this auditable sort of time slice of how something was created that can be audited later and used like a black box later to make software better, more secure, more performant, etc. So those are great ideas. And the spec-driven development is simply know what you're doing before you ask an agentic tool to write your Pomodoro timer for you. And it's just start with good documentation. Be clear, make this a project, make this less of vibe coding and more of just coding.
Maybe we should talk about the other hyperscaler with the big news, Microsoft. Because there was recently Microsoft Ignite was held recently in San Francisco. I was there with a couple of other Futurum analysts. I thought it was interesting. Keynotes, I'm not a massive fan of keynotes because they're very, very well scripted and everything else. But I thought this one was interesting. It was interesting partly because who was not there. Satya Nadella was not there, and obviously this goes to part of his the announcements they made a few months ago, where he's going to focus more on AI and also more on internal issues, and he left it all over to Judd Altoff, the CEO of the commercial business, and it was interesting how Microsoft does have some models, but Microsoft has obviously been leaning on OpenAI for its frontier models. It's not a frontier model provider really. It's an enabler, and Azure, through Azure. But so many of the announcements, and the keynote, for instance, went on for about 2.25 hours. up until about the last 10 minutes, it was all about software, which you probably think, well, yeah, Nick, Microsoft's a software company. But so many things we go to, even some elements of companies like Salesforce who've never talked about infrastructure, are talking about infrastructure. So it's quite revealing. I think they understand where their sweet spot obviously is, Microsoft this is. It's obviously in developers, but also enterprise users of all kinds. And I think that was evident in the topics and the things that they announced. It wasn't until right at the end they started talking about infrastructure. The other thing that was unusual about it slightly was the lack of customers until sort of later on. There was a couple of fireside chats, one with Mercedes and another customer, and all the rest of it they were using a fake company. They said this is a made up company called Zava. And they were using their own engineers to kind of play the role of somebody at this company, where they could be in advertising or marketing of that company, and they're doing demos like that. Which, if I'm being nice and fair to Microsoft, they're obviously doing it partly because it's very, very early in terms of customer adoption. And obviously, some of the things they're announcing obviously weren't announced until that very day, which has also happened to be the same day that Google announced Gemini 3. So I think it was an interesting reflection of where Microsoft is versus where AWS is, which is reInvent this week, versus where Google is.
Yeah, I was lurking from afar, and from my vantage point, I found it also interesting about that in-house use cases, and I think it, as you mentioned, Nick, it really speaks to the fact that Microsoft is looking a bit further forward than sometimes we get from them, and you can see that really reflected in some of their announcements. Well, it's always give and take. The give part is they announced this preview of what they call Fabric IQ, which just sounds like, oh, intelligent quotient, that must be really smart, and indeed it is. It's trying to bring some sort of semantic meaning to your data estate, which we could talk about as much as you guys want, but the balance to that was they came out with their own version of a PostgreSQL database called Horizon DB, which everybody and their cousin has a version of Postgres. That's why it's the world's most popular relational database. And the fact that Microsoft announced this as a part of Fabric, which they hinges on their idea of OneLake, which is a data lakehouse. It's like Databricks and somewhat Snowflake. It's to say that we want a very flexible data platform that separates storage and compute as much as we can, and leans heavily toward what we all love right now about bringing data to AI, and that's unstructured data. But you kind of need to pay attention to operational data. So I feel like at once they're trying to leap way ahead with Fabric IQ, and they're also trying to be very grounded in what they're doing for existing customers to help bring them forward on this journey. Because if you just made Fabric, just all about the data lakehouse and don't really try to bridge that long-standing gap between analytics and operational data estates, you're gonna just always end up with in-house customers, and you won't have any real ones.
Yeah. And then can I just touch on the other two IQs? They announced one called Work IQ, one called Foundry IQ. The Work IQ one was much more of the kind of the M365 user and Copilot, and this is sort of pulling everything from the knowledge graph that Microsoft's been building for years, plus the memory and context, and this is aiming at agents. If I'm working, it'll know what documents I've opened, who I've been emailing, who I've been chatting to in Teams, and all that kind of stuff, and it brings it all together. The Foundry is slightly different from the other two. The other two, Fabric and Work IQ, are kind of bounded by the kind of data they are looking at for very good reason. Foundry is the one that can kind of go anywhere else, including the web, and it's based on Azure AI Search. So it's kind of, in some ways, it's the evolution of enterprise search, the great kind of undelivered promise of IT over the last 30 or 40 years. But I think Foundry is a very interesting approach. And they also announced Agent Factory and Agent 365, the latter being their kind of agentic control plane, which is going to be, I think, very, very important for any kind of agentic orchestration is going to be massive over the next couple of years. So that was the other two things or three things I just wanted to point out.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And, I honestly, I feel like we could have probably talked a lot more about Ignite here. I think for me, the big news was that they didn't use Contoso as their sample company. Very disappointed to hear that. Um, so Microsoft actually has dozens of sample companies they've used in the past. I guess, Google told us that Contoso switched to Google Workspace a few years back.
How'd it go?
They did make that press release. So those of you who don't know what we're talking about here, I don't know, Google it or something. You'll find it. Bing it. Yeah. So, and of course, one more thing we do have to mention, this episode goes live during AWS reInvent. So in fact, Brad and Nick, I think both of you are at reInvent as well, right? So we will be talking about reInvent news probably for a little while, because we've given Google quite a lot of love here for Gemini. We've given Microsoft quite a lot of love for what they announced at Ignite. But of course, I guess who expects that AWS is going to sit on their hands? I mean, what do you anticipate at this point to be the big takeaways from reInvent?
Yeah, more of what Nick just mentioned. Agent orchestration all day, every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and with Agent Core, I think is what they're branding it from AWS, and it's such a critical aspect right now, because as one of the reasons why Microsoft came out with Fabric IQ, and it's the same thing we're getting from Snowflake with Snowflake Intelligence, and from Salesforce with their Agent Force. Is all about how you bring semantic meaning to the data, to bring the right context to these models. But it's not just about that. It's about how do you actually bring together these autonomous or semi-autonomous elements in a way that are non-deterministic, but still deterministic enough to get the outcome you want in a sort of reasonable manner, without exposing you to a ton of risk and without costing an arm and a leg. And that's all about orchestration. So that's what we expect to see a lot of from them.
And also, I do expect to see more infrastructure. There will be chip announcements, I assume, from AWS. So we're dragging us back down the stack down to that. I'm sure there'll be that. I mean, it's a big, as we were kind of alluding to earlier. If you can train your own models on your own silicon, it's a big cost advantage. And I think both AWS and Google are seeing that to a greater or lesser extent. If they don't have to keep shelling out for NVIDIA GPUs, then that's a big advantage for them. So expect more of that, and we'll be revisiting reInvent for quite a while after it's finished, I'm sure.
Yeah, Nick's right about the hardware thing. We can't forget it, can we? Because apparently Oracle was right, along with Exadata and vertical integration being kind of a useful thing, and we've seen it proven time and again with NVIDIA. And that is that, vertical integration leads to optimizations that let you do a lot more than if you're just white boxing it all day with just scale out, for trying to solve your problems. And with AI in particular, there are a lot of bottlenecks that show up in places like networking and in places like storage. And so that's why we see all of the, networking and hardware, storage, server, et cetera, vendors all leaning really hard right now on creating this sort of integration stack of optimization.
Yep, absolutely. And for that matter, we just last week heard about Nokia announcing that they're going to be the providing networking connectivity for AI models. They're investing $5 billion to have made in America networking hardware to support these things. I mean, there's all sorts of investment happening down at the infrastructure layer. And as Nick points out, that's my focus. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. We do have to wrap this week, though. So thank you both for joining us. Before we run, though, since, again, it is reInvent week for our listeners when they're listening to this, where can they find your coverage and reactions to reInvent? Brad?
Oh, well, I'll be on LinkedIn at Brad Shimon, all one word, and all of the traditional Futurum outlets, meaning futurum.com, et cetera.
All right, Nick?
Yeah, same. I'll be at LinkedIn at Nick Patience. I don't use X a lot, but I'm at Nick Patience on that, and Blue Sky, and also futurumgroup.com. We'll be writing notes for our clients and everybody else on what we see at reInvent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to be watching it as well. You'll find me at sfoskett on most social media networks. I'm using Blue Sky a lot lately. Maybe head over there. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Utilizing AI podcast. If you enjoyed the discussion, please do subscribe. You'll find us on YouTube as well as in your favorite podcast application. And also, we'd love to hear from you if you want to give us a rating or review. This podcast is brought to you by analysts and experts from the Futurum Group, where insights meet AI. For show notes and more episodes, head over to techstrong.ai, the Utilizing AI YouTube channel, or the Techstrong TV app. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.
We're back here at KubeCon. It's afternoon of day one of the main show. Yesterday, they had all the satellite conferences, but today's the opening of the show floor, and there's all kinds of things going on, including, I think there's the Cube Crawl or whatever they call it.
Tonight, yeah.
Yeah.
Tonight, yeah.
I don't know if I'll make it to that, but we'll see. Anyway, let me introduce you to my friend here. He's been on Techstrong TV before. His name's Tucker Callaway. Tucker, welcome back. I don't think you've ever done one of these live with us, though, right?
I think I have. I think I did 2 years ago at KubeCon. Or no, it was RSA.
RSA, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
At
okay.
KubeCon, you're right. At KubeCon, you're right. Yeah.
I like doing RSA.
Yeah.
We'll be at RSA this year.
All right.
We're going. We
See
just
you there.
got all my contracts done.
Yeah.
So in addition to doing this there, I put on an event Monday at RSA. And this year, it's usually DevSecOps, but this year it's going to be on AI, securing AI native dev.
Okay.
So
We're going to talk about
stay tuned
AI.
For that, we're going to talk about AI. And that's a great segue. No, before we segue into AI, seriously, Tucker is the CEO of Mezmo.
Yep.
And I don't know if you all know Mezmo, and that's okay if you haven't, don't be ashamed. But Tucker's going to make you smart about Mezmo. Tucker, go ahead, man. What's Mezmo about?
Yeah, so Mezmo is, we've actually been handling telemetry data in the observability space for a while. And we are all about delivering a new observability experience that's fueled by agentic operations. Now, obviously, that's something we've started in the last 12 to 18 months. But we think there's a new way to go about doing observability and analyzing data.
I think AI is going to disrupt this market
Yep.
like crazy, to tell you
Yeah.
the truth. But before we get into observability, well, we'll segue into it. But just real quick, Mezmo.com is the website?
Mezmo.com.
Okay. You guys also play, when we look at who does observability, who's using observability data, the SRE segment was a big segment for Mezmo. And lately we've seen the rise of, let's call it AI SRE. I don't know if I buy into. I don't know, it just sounds like a lot of friggin',
They got opinions.
letters put together. Well, let's start with defining it. What does AI SRE mean to you?
So I've said this a couple times. I don't really like the term. It's the term that we have.
Either.
The reason I don't like the term is because an SRE is like a person and a job and a role. And it's also one that we've given a lot of responsibility to over the years. And so just to suggest that you could AI a person or AI a role like that isn't right to me.
So you think it's replacing the SRE with AI?
No, I think it's more,
I think that's what people are referring to, and that's wrong.
Yeah, and I think what I think we should be doing is, to me, it's AI-driven observability.
Right.
So how do I take some of these mundane routine tasks of like tactically managing the system off of the SRE to allow them to go back to designing and scaling systems to do those things that require the big brains to do it, not do the routine things. And that's what really led us to, when I think about AI SRE, I think about detection, diagnosis, and remediation of incidents. But to me, that's really more AI-driven observability.
So I think this has a lot to do with what your view towards what role AI plays in all this.
Yeah.
Right? I just wrote an article a couple days ago about the use of AI in journalism and media.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and every media company is using AI. If they're saying they're not, they're full of crap.
They're lying. Yeah.
They're lying. I think it's pretty much like that in observability too. I think a lot of, we see it in developers. 90% of developers are using AI.
Yep.
Ops people, everyone, PR people. We could replace them all. No, we can't. But
Not
PR people, right? But PR people are using AI. We're all using AI. But what I wrote in the article is, from the Billy Joel's, AI didn't start the fire. AI can't start the fire.
Right.
It's the human that's the spark. You almost anything you're doing with AI today, you must have a human in the loop. So to me, when I hear AI SRE, I'm thinking about how is my SRE becoming better?
Here's how I think about it, and I like the Spark analogy.
Yep.
We actually just rebranded around
got a Spark.
around a Spark.
Very cool.
And you didn't know that.
No,
That was
no, I
really
didn't because it was
amazing.
under there.
That's amazing.
What are you having for dinner? No, I'm only kidding.
But to me, that Spark is actually the data is the Spark. And what's changed a lot is how we can analyze data. So when we think about what observability fundamentally was, it was presenting complex data to humans for them to determine the root cause of a problem and the next steps. And so like the solutions that are like out there today are basically taking people through an investigatory process and presenting them with the information in a very human consumable way. That is no longer the best way to analyze data.
No.
Right?
What
Now,
is the best?
the problem is AI is a better way to do it, but the problem is at operational scale, the amount of data that telemetry or observability creates can't just be processed through AI. So we found that training the models, which is kind of the prevailing approach today, and doing better prompts was an insufficient way to actually derive operational outcomes with AI to do the AI SRE. So we took a different approach, which is to optimize the input. And so we basically apply, it's called context engineering as the discipline versus prompt engineering. And what we do is we basically refine the data before it's supplied to the model. And that allows us to give better, faster, and cheaper outcomes out of the model.
Love it.
So we can do it without training. We can do it without using your data. We can have you up and running in 5 minutes to do this. It happens at like 10% of the cost of what the traditional approaches are. We have benchmarks to prove this too. It's pretty fascinating. Like, as you know, we've been focused for a while on the processing of real-time data. Well, it turns out that suited us really well in this transformation to an AI world.
I think, well, I was just going to say that because that's kind
Lucky,
of
better be lucky than good.
Best to be both.
Yeah, we're both.
My lesson of 25 years in venture-backed startups. But, to me, so let's put the SRE to the side because that's a human issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're replacing humans with AI today.
No.
I think we're replacing humans with other humans who maybe use AI better, right? But the human's going to be there. But when we look at observability, look, I've watched observability blow up here at KubeCon over the last 3-4 years. OpenTelemetry, Prometheus, have become OpenTel more than any of them.
Yeah.
Giants. I mean, and almost the whole observability space has OpenTel kind of under the hood there and as a building block.
Yeah.
I really believe that AI and AI, whether we're talking agentic AI, which is really, I think, where we're going.
Yeah.
I think generative had its moment in the sun, but it's agentic.
Great.
Has the potential to blow it up yet again. It was like observability was a fission bomb, and now we're looking at a hydrogen bomb.
A couple of ways that I look at that. One is I think the consumption of AI is going to explode observability in a way that's far greater than what the cloud did.
Yeah.
Right? That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that the way we think about analyzing that data is just going to change dramatically, right? So an OTel is a huge part of that. So it used to be that the incumbent vendors in observability owned the creation of data. Well, they don't own that anymore. OTel owns that.
Right.
And that was this massive disruption without any consequence, because we were still fundamentally dependent upon those incumbents to analyze and process the data.
Right, because
they were the best way to process the data.
they were the face.
They were the face.
The other stuff was kind of under the hood.
Yeah, so now the face is changing, because now the best way to, as we were talking about, the best way to analyze that data is actually to do it agentically. So now if you're an incumbent, you no longer own the creation, nor do you own the analysis of the data. So now this is just a data management and an experience problem. It's no longer this big giant problem that an incumbent can own. So the problem is like been chipped away at, but I know AI has taken us to this tipping point where the analysis is now better done, in the model, not by the human. And what we're proving, we believe we have proven, is the models today are good enough. They don't need to be trained. You just need to give them the right data.
Right.
And if you refine the data in the right way, you will get the outcomes that you expect, that you want and hope for out of AI today. It can be done.
And so to me, this begs the question, then what is the human's role in it?
So the human role is going to be, for a period of time, going to be pretty big, right? Because if you get back into detection, diagnosis, and remediation, we're really focused on the diagnosis, because I don't believe you can get to agentic remediation until you have extreme trust in the diagnosis phase.
I agree.
Right? Like no one's gonna let remediation happen agentically. I mean, you might have a human in the loop trigger it, but that's just a human firing off an automation routine. We've been doing that for a long time, and it will get better with AI. But like really tightening that loop requires extreme trust in the diagnosis phase. That's where we're focused right now. So I think until we have that extreme trust, we're always going to have the human in the loop. But ultimately, we need to be thinking about designing these systems for agents to process, not humans to process. And that doesn't replace humans. That puts humans in control of agentic processing. And it puts humans back into, how do I design scalable systems and things like that, which is not an SRE. I actually operated as one in a weird way for in 99, but
I thought you just stayed in a Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah. But I believe that they got into their discipline and profession because they wanted to build and design systems, not because they wanted to do observability and firefight incidents.
Right. Well, I'm sure none of the people 10 years ago raised their hand and said, I want to grow up to be an SRE. Right? We didn't have SRE until Google wrote the book.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But I do think you're right, that I think the SREs come from the ops, what we used to call sysops, right?
Yeah.
Some of them are now SREs. Other pieces of the sysop are, platform engineering. I think we're seeing a lot of overlap between SRE and platform engineering. But I think at the end of the day, I'm old. They're all ops people to me, right? They're all ops. And I started DevOps.com, right? I'm a big believer in Dev and Ops and security and all these disciplines coming together. I do think I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I do think AI gives us the ability to bring these together and to recognize some of the goals that you just said about why they got into it.
I was at Chef during the DevOps movement. I've been in observability forever. We've been trying to do these things for a really long time now. And I think we can actually deliver on the promise.
Yeah.
Finally.
I think having better observabilities and making the SRE's job easier, if you will, is almost a byproduct of all these things, right? But in your case, it's the main thing. I mean, it's what Mezmo's about to a lot of degrees. But I think it's a friggin' great time to be in the observability SRE business right now.
Here's an interesting thing to think about. I would argue that the only task that an SRE does in a visual UI is observability.
So what did they use? Everything else they do is not.
Everything else is infrastructure as code. They're all doing everything as code. Like UI is not a traditional way of scaling a system. Now they do it in observability because they're forced to visualize and investigate and complex data.
Right.
If we take that off their plate, they can now consume observability in their native tools. Like they can consume it.
So what are their native tools?
Command line, Slack, Cursor, things like that. They don't have to go into this UI. They can actually operate, not have to switch contexts. They can go do the things that they do in the place that they do it and not have to leave their workspace to go to observability to then go back to where they operate, which is more on the command line.
So I'm a Star Trek dude.
Yeah.
I think with AI, we have the capability to bust out from Windows and command lines. The whole human-computer interaction is going to change.
Yeah.
And so if I'm an SRE, I'm just going to tell the computer what I need to know right now.
Right.
Right? And it's going to tell me. And whether it tells me, that I hear or it flashes something on a screen or whatever, the idea of having to be able to sit here and type in shit. I know we're live, excuse me. The idea of being able to sit here and type in on a keyboard is history with, like, our kids won't type on keyboards to talk to or to communicate with their computing devices, whatever they may be.
Yeah. No, I think it's true.
And so that's going to create a whole new opportunity about, and I don't know, is it something that we get wired in? Is it holographic stuff? Is it just pure? Because some people don't comprehend what they hear, they need to see.
Yeah. And I think to that point though, I think there's obviously I've been on this kick of that's kind of anti-visualization, anti-dashboard, but you do need that for trust, and you do need it for verification, and you do need it for audits at times. But I think you can ask, you can ask the model for it. Just say, give me a visualization.
And
I don't need
it gives it to you on the fly.
A persistent dashboard that's
it's
sitting around spinning, doing.
I agree with you. And I think you just ask it, and it conjures it up, kind of thing, right? You don't need to be spending time developing, UIs. And I'm sorry for all my friends who are UI developers out there, but I do think we are on the verge of, what started, I guess, in 1970s, right? Xerox PARC was the whole window mouse way of computer human interaction. We might finally be outgrowing that. We'll see.
Look, I'll settle for, high trust in the diagnosis of Mezmo's SRE, agentic SRE.
You want to walk before
I'll settle for that.
I get it.
I'll settle for that.
I get it.
Let's get there first.
One step at a time. I'm a dreamer. But Mezmo.com, did we mention that?
We did. Check it out.
Mezmo.
New brand with the spark and everything.
I love it with the yellow spark. Give me one of these again.
Heat it up perfectly.
There you go. Look at it right there, baby.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, enjoy KubeCon.
Okay.
KubeCon. It's
Thanks
great seeing you again.
Thanks for having
me. Back on Techstrong TV soon. Let's hear more. Tucker Callaway, CEO of Mezmo. That's Mezmo.com with a spark here at KubeCon. We're going to take a break. We got more coming your way. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, we're back here. We're live at KubeCon. It's Wednesday, day 2 of the main floor being open and the keynotes and so forth. Let me introduce you to my next guest. His name is Alexis Richardson. And if you've ever used Flux or heard of Flux or GitOps, you have, a little bit you could thank him. Alexis,
thank you.
Welcome to Techstrong.
Thank you, Shimmy. I'm
great
really
to have
happy
you here.
to be here. It's great.
It's great to have you. Before we get into your company and everything else, let's talk a little bit about you.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind, I said some things, but share your story with our audience.
So, I guess I started my career at Goldman Sachs. I was a trader.
Really?
Derivatives. Yep. High stakes gambling.
High risk, high pressure.
High
not
pressure.
a long lifespan, though.
Very much not. No. And I actually found it boring.
Did you?
Yeah, all you do all day, sit at your desk, you have these boxes squawking at you, and you make a decision whether or not to buy or sell some derivatives.
So for all you day traders out there, and you know who I'm looking at, Boring.
Boring.
All right.
And I wanted the connection with humanity. I wanted to build things that other people would get excited about. So I started a software company, and that led me to create something called RabbitMQ, which is my first big success. It's still going
Cool.
as a piece of software, standard piece of software. That was acquired by VMware after a few years. Then I was part of the Pivotal spin out. I led one of the app teams there, created the whole new generation of Spring. Product. I'm not an engineer, I'm a product person. And then I left to do a company called Weaveworks. Which was where we invented GitOps and Flux.
Very cool.
Did the CNCF. I was the chair of the TOC for maybe 4 years.
Wow.
Helped get all this stuff going. I went to the first KubeCon, it was 100 people.
In San Francisco.
100 people. There's nothing going on.
No.
Nothing.
See, I didn't start going, I think, till the third one in Seattle.
Yep, there you go. So, I mean, that was big by then.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so exciting to see the change. It's just all incredible. So anyway, after doing that, we created GitOps, and every single customer told me, it's a good Alexis. I've got this automation. I've got all these different tools I can choose because you did it as an open thing. The problem is my ops team really hate me because you're making them all learn this thing called YAML.
It has been a scourge that people laugh about.
I don't want to learn YAML. I don't want to learn Terraform. I don't want to learn Vault. And if the systems go down, I want to go to the screen and I want to press the on-off button until I get it right. And so, we call this being in configuration hell, config hell. And that's what led me to do the next company, which is called ConfigHub.
So we're bringing it right up to today.
Up to today.
Wait, I want to go back a little bit.
Please do.
So when you say GitOps, first of all, I'm not sure if everyone out here has the same definition of GitOps.
Yeah.
What does GitOps mean to you?
Right. GitOps is when you operate a system automatically based on a plan which lives in a separate place. We call that plan the desired state. That explains everything the system is supposed to do. It's the what. Not the how, but the what that you're expecting to happen. It's like, imagine you're running a factory floor and you have a plan of where all the robots are, where all the pipelines are, what everything is supposed to do. And then you have autonomous agents that use the plan to tell all the operating pieces what to do and continually check that they're doing it correctly. And they're always checking back to see if the plan has changed or if the operation needs to be corrected. And they'll automatically fix any differences. So it's always doing what we call continuous drift detection and reconciliation. And that continuous loop of operations, that is GitOps. So it's automatic management of systems based on a plan, which we put into Git. When we wrote down the rules of GitOps in the GitOps working group in the CNCF, which you can go look at online, it says it doesn't have to actually be Git. It could be any store that you use as a single source of truth for your plan, your desired state, so long as it has versioning, multiple users, non-repudiation, and all those valuable things that tell us this is a safe place to store your information, your plan about your running systems. But modern GitOps includes people using other stores as well. People are using Git with JFrog now, OCI stores. I see people using it with Vault from HashiCorp, with S3 on Amazon. It's a little bit more complex than just one physical store, but you have one single view of the truth, and that is your plan. And GitOps is automatically managing systems based on that plan. It is not putting pull requests in Git.
No. But to many people it is, right? And that's why I kind of asked you, and that was the money line right there.
Well, I posted a blog post at the beginning, 2017, and it was called Operations by Pull Request. And that set off that whole pathway of misunderstanding.
I got you. Let me ask you another question before we jump into ConfigHub. The CNCF has
I do know the CNCF.
They got over 200 projects in here now.
Is it really that many now?
Yeah.
You could get lost in the pavilion over there.
Yeah, you could. And that's only part of it. But and they're good about this, right? They have numerous service mesh projects they're managing that on first blush can be somewhat competitive. They have at least 2 major GitOps, right? Argo CD and Flux.
That's right.
As the creator of Flux, just between you and me, forget all the people watching this.
We'll just
Does that kind of piss you off a little bit, or you think they're handling it well, having both?
my fault.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I'm not sure how I should say this. One of the motivations when we started the CNCF, I was involved in the creation of the CNCF. Craig McCluskey from Google was talking to me, and he said, I want to put Kubernetes in the foundation. And I said, well, I've just been at Pivotal, and we were creating the Cloud Foundry Foundation with IBM.
Yes.
So I've just had some recent experience of foundations. I think I can help you with that. So he wrote down some rules, and I said, look, it's really important to avoid the mistakes
Of Cloud
past
Foundry.
foundations.
Yeah.
Cloud Foundry made a couple of mistakes. Apache made some mistakes. Eclipse made some mistakes.
They all do. That's life.
But the big elephant in the room is OpenStack. You remember that all of the hope we had on
Yes,
OpenStack,
I do.
Everybody thought, wow, this is going to change things. What went wrong? They've got it kind of back on track now, but for years they got lost.
Well, but let's be clear. For those of you out there who don't realize, Open Infra, which is now part of CNCF,
That's right.
was actually the OpenStack
That's right.
foundation.
That's right. The bigger thing swallowed the smaller thing,
Yeah.
like with acquisitions. So where OpenStack went wrong is they said it's all got to be one open product, one stack, and we'll have committees to define how everything fits together. And the more you do that, the harder it becomes to actually do any real work.
Yep.
You just spend your whole time talking between different committees.
Death by meetings.
Anyone who's been working at a university will have seen this. If you've been in Europe and you live in the European Union, you'll have seen this.
Not-for-profits.
All of that, and you have these people who love that way of working, and
Yeah.
they make it worse.
Yeah.
We call them bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, look, what we're going to do is we're going to be project first in the CNCF. We will not assume that we know better about the future than anybody else. So we will not pick one thing and say that's the winner over another thing when it's clearly far too early. OpenStack did that, and they ended up creating a mess around the whole networking layer,
Yeah.
for example. And they got held hostage by a couple of projects. So we said, we are too stupid in the TOC to figure out which one's going to be. We're not going to pick winners. We're going to let them figure it out in the community.
Let the market
Let the
talk.
market work it out. I'm
Yeah.
such a big believer in that. It's a democratic, open model, bit of capitalism, bit of democracy, and then the time will tell. Over time, some things will run ahead, some things will fall behind. And we won't make dumb errors like OpenTelemetry. The OpenTelemetry story, I confess, I thought that was the dumbest proposal I'd ever heard. Clearly, the team weren't sure what they were doing. And it was a very, very ill thought out set of standards. But actually, we also said as the TOC, but these guys, they have a right to try.
Yeah.
Let's let them have a go. And they turned into one of the biggest successes. And now, if we'd run the CNCF like OpenStack, OpenTelemetry would have been shut out the
Right.
door on day zero.
And we'd still be in horseless carriages.
Still be a
right?
horseless carriage.
Hey, but you know what? So I have a lot of friends in the VC world.
Good.
And one of the favorite things VCs love to do over drinks is talk about the ones they just missed on versus the ones they thought were surefire,
Yep.
and how badly they miscalculated.
Absolutely.
Part of it. It's part of it. But as you sit here in retrospect, you do the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I do believe the market is the great sanitizer, right? It doesn't care about your mistakes. It doesn't
It's
really.
organized around incentives.
Yeah.
That's the most important part.
Absolutely. All right. Let's pivot over to ConfigHub now. Yes.
Yes.
New company.
New company.
I've never met a founder who wasn't extremely passionate about what they're doing.
I am passionate.
What's your passion on this one?
And we think that we can really change how operations works so that it is automated, managed, and safe as it's now going to explode in the world of AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is missing is nobody has a good modern configuration database that tracks what every application is doing, what state it is all in, keeps it up to date automatically. So you just go look at that database. You have a fresh view. This is what's happening out there in my world. And if something is wrong, you can change it. And if you're about to do something wrong, it says, hello, you're about to make a mistake. My policy detector has picked that up. Are you sure you want to do this? Because it's going to blow this up, and you can stop it from happening. When things do go wrong, the tool will also let you see which particular YAML file was responsible for screwing everything up for you. You can find it, you can find the right line and fix it. That's a beautiful thing that we don't have today. What we have instead is people talk about YAML hell, configuration hell. We see configuration sprawl, lots of systems, lots of tools, lots of files. Nobody can find anything, 3-day outages, data loss, and now bring in AI. You're putting this agent inside your organization. Anything could happen.
Agreed.
We're going to get rid of all of that.
So given your history, ConfigHub open source?
Nope.
I knew you were going to say that. All right, why?
Well, one reason is market's much tougher now, 2025, than it was in the past.
Yeah.
You cannot do two things at once. If you do, you're going to fail. Remember Docker?
Yes, vaguely.
I think. When you run an open source business, you're having to win on two fronts. You've got to get the best open source project or the second best. Third will not be good enough. And you've got to succeed commercially as well, which is a whole different thing, different set of features, people, sales, marketing, all of that. And then you've got to make them work together. And that's a really tough set of challenges. And timing's got to be right and so on. And also, you've got to be super patient. You've got to spend 3 years making your open source project successful, then build your first commercial thing, then a bit more open source. It's a 15-year job.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and I don't know if you've noticed.
It's not the most efficient.
Yeah, it's not the most efficient.
And where do you want to be in 15 years?
Well, on the beach.
Yeah.
So we're starting out with our commercial offering first. Really, really highly focused on user success. That's the big play. Go to the product. It does some things for you, and you can tell us if it's working or not. It's a SaaS first product. I've teamed up with some fantastic people who've worked with Brian Grant, who was one of the originators of Kubernetes out of Google, and Jesper Jørgensen, who was the lead at Heroku, rolled out the Twilio platform. So we're bringing together a really good set of folks around this problem. It's very exciting.
I love it. We're almost out of time, but for people wanting to get more information on ConfigHub, what's the website?
ConfigHub.com.
Easy enough.
Yep.
And then how would they engage here?
Engage, follow me on LinkedIn, get in touch that way, or send an email to hello@confighub.com, or you can sign up for the product. Go to docs.confighub.com, it'll tell you where to sign up. Those are the ways to engage.
I love it. You'll come back. We're going to talk more about the history of GitOps and other things, but we'll do it on the Techstrong TV.
Okay.
We don't have all this around us. Alexis,
thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Little history right here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back. We've got day 2 coverage coming at you. You're watching Techstrong TV.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Ingram Micro ONE, and I'm talking with my friend Hans here, who is a solution provider with a specialty in healthcare. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Been a really, really great conference.
There's just been an awesome amount of innovation in healthcare lately, and I'll just walk people through a little bit what's going on in that sector and your role in it, and what are the opportunities?
Yeah, we're finding there's a lot going on with an interest in AI, trying to find ways to, automate manual processes. And we've delved into a very, very niche aspect of that industry with procurement organizations and tissue banks, tissue processors. And there is a tremendous amount of opportunity both for AI and just automation across everything they do within their supply chain.
There's also a lot of regulations in healthcare. I don't think that's much of a surprise to anybody, but we're trying to apply AI to that. How do you walk the nuances of that, where there's concerns about privacy maybe in the data, but we also need to come up with some automation? That seems like a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And, some of the things we're finding out, I mean, obviously we've got certain compliance and accreditations that we have to get organizationally, SOC 2 and HIPAA. And then you got the PII information that they hold and that ties into their own processes. So we have to be respectful of the confidentiality of not only the information that they have on the patient records, but also the confidentiality of their own internal processes and how they use it. Because in some cases, it's a competitive advantage. In some cases, it's very, very intrinsic to how they operate that they actually don't want it to release. And they're all very sensitive to the aspects of the regulations, for that confidential information processes. And I mean, right now it's just respect and with the technology to be able to do what they need to do, but at the same time, not allow us to limit us.
When I talk to people, there are two challenges, but the first one everybody seems to know, it's like AI will occasionally hallucinate. So how do I kind of work around that or account for that factor when I'm building out something in a healthcare scenario?
Yeah, that is it's really interesting because the way that we are actually applying AI for our clients in this industry is that that does exist. And the challenge is that the data, as much as you need it, as much as it feeds into the AI engine, it's basically the lifeblood of the AI engine as well, because the AI model has to be trained off of that data. And we've got all the regulations that you just mentioned that prohibit some of that data in terms of how we use it to aggregate it with other clients at a very aggregated level. And we don't have that opportunity. So the model has to be trained, and the more data that we can get from the organization we're working with, we can work around that. That's number one. Second part is that no single AI model will provide the outcome that we need for our clients. So we're having to stack the technology with other types of ML-oriented code, other types of AI-oriented models that do very specific functions to work in tandem to provide an outcome.
So I've kind of got a layered approach where some of the AI models are validating the output of the other AI models to make sure that whatever is being generated actually is supposed to be what it is.
Correct. Yeah, at a very simplistic level, yes.
The other side of the coin, too, is that a lot of the healthcare processes are what we would call deterministic. They're supposed to be done the same way every time. AI models are probabilistic and hardly ever do anything the same way twice. So how do I connect something that is probabilistic into a deterministic workflow and kind of meld that together?
Yeah, and I go back to what I just said earlier, right? There's the prompt engineering, there's the AI models, there's the AI model stacked and layered on the other AI models. We've got a vector database that's built into there as well. The understanding of their business process and what the outcome is. So the model, in order to train it to have a predetermined outcome every single time, the more data that we can feed into it, the more scenarios that we actually get from it that we can hone in and refine on, we'll start providing that very, very precise answer. And it's one of those where it's a process of refinement, or an iterative process. So the first time you build it out, it's not going to be perfect. And so the more data that we can actually feed into it, the more input we can get from the end users, we actually start honing in on that precise answer.
Now, everybody watching this is probably having the same question. Where did you find the people with the skills to go do that? Because most of the folks are saying, I love this AI stuff, but they all want to work for NVIDIA or something. So how do you get those guys to come work for you?
Yeah, trying to answer this the proper way. So there is a constraint in the marketplace for skilled AI software engineers. And I have to compete with, the Facebooks and all the big, hyperscalers for that talent. In my particular case, I got very, very lucky because the AI engineer that we hired married my youngest daughter, and I provided an opportunity, and there was an opportunity he probably wouldn't get at the other places because he has an opportunity here to actually kind of define our direction and to be able to be very creative with the AI in an applied sense. But going beyond, my small team of him and a couple of others, it naturally is very difficult. So one of the things that we're trying to do to augment that is that there are AI tools that allow us to do some code development on the front end. It's not perfect, still has a ways ways to go, but it does save us time. So we're trying to use automation and code development to be able to close the gap on some of that. And then like anybody else, you've got to go out and hire the talent as well. So we got to ensure we get the right talent.
Of course, we're at an Ingram event. How did you get connected to Ingram, and what does Ingram do for you as part of the building of this solution?
So the story that most resonates is that we got into this about 2 years ago. So that's when I hired our senior AI engineer, November 6th of 2023. And he came on board, and Ingram actually had, and we started out with IBM's watsonx. They were actually sponsoring a level 3 workshop with IBM in Chicago. So his first day on the job was on an airplane heading to Chicago to get his credentials on watsonx. So he spent a week there going through the workshop. And that was really brokered by Ingram, having the foresight to actually, go out and say, how do we actually get our partners enabled? How do we get them engaged? How do we get them to a point where they can actually start talking AI? And it was a really good foundation because it allowed us a better understanding of how the technology was being positioned, in terms of a go-to-market. But we had to learn after that, how do you actually go in and start selling this? So we relied on the Ingram team to understand what types of proof of concepts, how do we actually go through a sales cycle, how do we actually engage with prospects who have a need, and then we had to hone our skills from there.
Of course, you also work with a lot of the vendor partners that Ingram represents. I don't know if you can tell me in a lot of detail, but which of those vendor partners are kind of at the core of that solution for you guys right now? And what is it that you would wish that maybe more of those vendors would remember when dealing with solution providers such as yourself?
Yeah, it's right now with just the terminology of AI. I think the large vendors, the ones that are well known, that make the news every day, they're sowing a lot of confusion. Everybody's talking about the art of the possible. As a reseller partner, as somebody who actually engages with a client, by the time we engage, they don't want to hear about the art of the possible. They want to see a solution that actually works. So there's a big gap between what the vendors are providing and what the solution providers actually have to deliver. So we rely on Ingram heavily, not necessarily with the technology partners that we work with, IBM and Microsoft, and there will be others in the future, but it's the relationships that we don't have with the other technology partners that Ingram does have. So for instance, if there is a reason for us to change some of the back-end coding with a different LLM or a different AI type model that is specific to a certain vendor, we don't have the relationship, Ingram will probably have that relationship, and we have to leverage Ingram to help build our credentials and reputation to be able to open the door and get the right resources that we need so we can continue our development to provide that solution to the end client.
One of the things that I hear a lot about is every CEO has a bad case of fear of missing out and thinks that this AI stuff is all magically happening tomorrow. And then there's their staff and people who are a little more circumspect because they understand what's required to actually implement. How do you, as the solution provider, kind of navigate that relationship and those conversations? Because essentially you're a diplomat between these groups.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's that was, I would say, situationally, that was probably the case 2 years ago when we started. AI was this concept, and pretty much every executive team says, okay, we've got to get AI in here. And our first probably handful of phone calls or overtures from our client base, not necessarily our prospect base, was, hey, can you help us with AI? And my response was, yeah, absolutely. What would you like us to do? Says, well, that's why we're calling you. And it was this panacea that all of a sudden you basically, you install something, you implement it, and everything is going to work to perfection. It's just like this magic button you press. In reality, that's not the case. On the staff level folks, the operating level folks, they're seeing AI as a threat. So it's basically our executive team wants to bring in AI, and it will basically replace my job. And so you have this diversity of thoughts and understanding of what AI is supposed to do. So we have to obviously educate the C-level folks that it is not that be-all, end-all solution where you push a button and everything magically works, and it's trained on your data. And then we also simultaneously have to work with the operations folks and let them know that we're not here trying to put a system in to replace your job. What we are trying to do is that, right now, the focus and the benefit of AI is really, time savings and productivity improvement. So we want the system to be able to do the heavy lifting for them and the process and use everything that AI can do based on the data that's being fed to it to free up their time to work on the very true value add, needle moving types of aspects of their job that's going to really enhance the company's productivity.
One of the funny things about healthcare, at least from my perspective, is it was always perceived as a sluggish kind of business because they were collecting a lot of data, tagging it and organizing it. And yet that may be their secret sauce for AI, because they did a lot of that heavy lifting of the data work already that a lot of other vertical industries have not.
I would agree with that to a certain extent, but there are, I would say, upstream functions that take place that are still very manual. And a lot of that tagging, categorization of data, which actually makes our job easier, right? Because it's all well-defined. A lot of that has been done, but there's a lot of unstructured data that shows up in forms and handwritten notes. It shows up in JPEG images, OCR images that we have to translate in. And not only that, you can have forms that have the same information, but the forms are different. And the context is missing from that. So when we actually build out these AI solutions, we have to ingest those documents. We have to understand what is in those documents. We have to understand what the context of those documents are, so that we can turn the information on those documents into relevant, very well-defined, categorized information to then let the AI model be able to provide the output that it wants. So to your point, a lot of what they do operationally, for production, for, patient outcome, yes, that is. But upstream from that, a lot of the information is very unstructured and creates a challenge for them. And there's a huge amount of opportunity as far as productivity gains from that as well.
It almost sounds like, you have a solution and you've kind of landed and now you're looking to expand. So what are you thinking about as the next opportunity?
Yeah, so we're actually, we've got a great client that we're working and forming a strategic relationship with. And it's a tissue processor. So basically organ donation, and then they actually take tissue, donor tissue, and then look at eligibility requirements. So they be able to look at lifestyle, they be able to look at disease, they look at things of that nature, and qualification criteria for the tissue. They have their own manufacturing process, and as we spoke earlier, that's very well defined. The information is very well defined. How they capture the information and move the information through there is very well defined. But on the front end of that, how they actually analyze the donor and how the tissue, the suitability for the tissue that they have to process for their inpatients, the hospitals, the doctors, the clinicians. So we've developed an AI application to be able to do that manual process on the front end, and then the automation that follows that, the donor traceability. So now that we've got the components being processed and tracking that all the way through to the final production of that tissue, so that it's either a skin graft or a bone graft or whatever that final product is, so they can inventory that and then push that out to the hospitals. And then there's the entire supply chain and ecosystem where the supply-demand match is very inefficient. So we're looking at the hospitals, the doctors, the clinicians, when they actually need something, how can we actually compress that cycle time so that they can get it from the tissue processors in a shorter period of time. And there's additional opportunities beyond that as well. So there's a plethora of things that we can do. Technology can help, but you've got to have a good partnership with folks in the industry to do it.
Yeah. I almost think like anywhere there's friction, it becomes an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely.
So last question, as you look into the coming year, what are you excited about? What are you thinking about? And maybe what's keeping you up at night?
Well, the geopolitical stuff's keeping me up at night, so not a whole lot I can do about that. But there are opportunities. I think, we've had 2 years of maturation, not only within my organization, but I think within just industry in general, and understanding, AI. AI has gone from this concept of AI is, it's just this broad term that everything's kind of lumped into it. Now we've got, the generative AI, we've got agentic AI. We're still focused on use cases, but I think a lot of the use cases will be addressed by agentic AI to a certain extent. And then you have the possibility of that automation where you get the AI agents talking to each other and looking for those opportunities. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, right, we are still collecting data as part of that process. We're trying to take the friction out of the supply chain. So the question I asked the CEO of our client is that if you were to look at your processes and you were to take all the friction out, what's the shortest amount of time that it would take to actually process the tissue that you work with? And he thought about this. I said, that should be our goal. And that's what I'm excited about, because I think the technology can get us closer to that goal, because we can automate a lot of the processes in a very smart, intelligent fashion, not necessarily to replace jobs, but again, take the folks that are very good at what they do and allow them more time to be able to do it better.
Especially the stuff I don't enjoy doing in the first place.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it takes a village to do AI, and it kind of starts with the solution providers and includes the distributors and the vendors, and that's how it all comes together. Buddy, thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll be back in a minute. Hey everybody, welcome back to Ingram Micro ONE. We're talking with my new friend Sophie here about what's happening in the channel in France. Sophie, welcome to the show.
Good to see you.
The partners, I'm sure, have lots of challenges. There's a lot happening in France these days, but when you talk to them, what's keeping them up at night?
So they have to face a lot of headwinds right now. So they think about the way they can be innovative in this market, which is slowing down because of the fact that the budget has not been voted yet. So all of the public sector, or most of the public sector budget projects have been frozen. Enterprise tends to delay a bit their investment. So in front of this tough market situation, it's important for them, first of all, to streamline their OPEX, see how they can be more efficient, and also to accelerate their performance. So they are looking at it with us. So it's all about how can we standardize the processes, refocus our teams on the added value task so that we can create mutual value.
It would also seem that a lot of the end customers in France are probably navigating all kinds of economic issues themselves.
Indeed.
And they're probably looking to the partners for some help as to maybe how to streamline things and be more efficient.
Exactly. And so then the purpose for the resellers is to see how we, as distributor, we can help them meeting their partners' expectations. So it's important for them to be able to leverage our technical resources and our human resources. So it's all about what we are talking about right now.
One of the things that we're talking about here at the show a lot is there's a shift a little bit to focus more on business outcomes. It's not enough just to be a trusted technology advisor. I have to work with the end customer. I have to know something about their business a little bit. Is that playing out in France as well?
Yeah, of course. So now we are all looking at the way we can create better value for our partners, for their own partners, and it's based on all of the artificial intelligence we are leveraging through our platform. We have talked about it a lot right now with, and Sanjeev on stage talked about it even more this morning. So how can we accelerate the performance? How can we increase the breadth? How can we leverage the new tools we have? Sanjeev talked about the digital assistant, intelligent digital assistant. We can leverage to do that, we can use. And finally, what I think is we can talk about artificial intelligence, but first of all, it's about human intelligence. How can we have the right purpose in our discussion?
There will always be some human in the middle of that process somewhere, right?
There will always be, fortunately.
Right. I hope so. I guess the question I would have, though, is things tend to roll downhill in this world. So are the partners leaning more on you for certain expertise and professional services because they can't always find that talent, or they might not want to invest at something that they need once?
So the kind of service we are talking about, we were so far talking about professional services, for example, around the cloud, around cybersecurity. But I think that more and more we will talk about new services, consultancy around how can we all leverage these new technologies? How can we leverage artificial intelligence in the way we can all increase our overall efficiency? And they need also our experience to do that, right? So Tiffany yesterday talked about the fact that we need to use energy as a service. So I kept it in mind. What is the narrative beyond artificial intelligence? Because what we see is that we all are using artificial intelligence for our own purpose, but what are the true use cases in the enterprise, right? How can we really streamline the workflows? And I think that most of the partners, they are not very clear at that yet. So they need us to be trusted advisor and accompany them in this motion.
As that occurs, in every country that I talk to, there seems to be a skill shortage. And for the partners, it's almost doubly acute because I need technology people who are customer facing and friendly to customers. So how does Ingram work with them to kind of find that kind of unique unicorn in the IT landscape?
To find what kind of unicorn? So
IT people who can talk to customers and explain things to them and are very have a lot of empathy for the customer.
Yeah. So you mean how do we find this talent? Or it's not that easy to find this kind of talent.
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, because IT. So even in IT, the job is really shifting a lot right now, and we are less relying on the hard skills than on the soft skills. So it's a combination of IT skills and the ability to create the right synergies with the salespeople so that we have a common language to the people and to the customers. And to be honest, in France, we didn't find the right profile yet. Fortunately, we can rely on the global resources. All of the people from Sanjeev's team can really help us. Then we still have to deal with the language issues. So we are leveraging the global resources from an IT perspective and leveraging our local resources for the sales purpose. So it's a good combination.
France, of course, is part of the EU. Is there more transactions spanning multiple borders? Are the partners working with each other across Europe, or are they still pretty much focused in their particular country?
No, it's still really focused at local level most of the time. So what we see is the complexity doesn't come so much from the fact that we have to interconnect different countries, even if it's can occur, but the complexity comes more from the fact that when we deal with projects, we have to combine different technologies, different skill sets. And we need sometimes to connect different partners to each other. And for that, the platform Xvantage is made for that. It's an ecosystem which is made to create mutual values between the vendors, the customers, and also to onboard some customers on the same project and be complementary in their skills.
Are the partners becoming more open to that level of alliance with other solution providers? Because sometimes, at least historically, they always kind of view each other a little warily because they think they're competitors.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. During this event, for example, we are here with 10 French partners. And during lunchtime, even during the dinner, they start talking about their skills, their experience, and to see how they could be complementary and work together to compete with some big players, right? And it's true in the mid-market area and the SMB area.
Of course, we're here at a show, and I don't think you can go very far without running into somebody talking about AI, and we talked about it earlier, but what's the level of enthusiasm among the partners for AI? I mean, are they kind of studying it, or are they all in?
No, they are not all in yet. So they are wondering exactly what it means concretely, right? Because while most of the people, they know what they do with ChatGPT, for example, for their personal life, coming back to the enterprise, beyond AI, there are a lot of questions around as I mentioned before, what are the concrete use cases, but also from a security perspective. How can we make sure that we have the best usage of it without compromising our data? So for that, we need really to explain them through our own AI factory that we can secure their data and that we can provide the right added value and contribute to their business development without, of course, compromising their own security.
One of the themes of the keynotes here has been this whole notion of using AI to make it easier to do business, not just with the partner at Ingram, but from the partner to the end customer.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're going to see like a significant reduction in the amount of friction that has historically been in those processes over the years?
Yeah, I think so. If you take what makes the job of a distributor right now, there are still a lot of, let's say, low added value tasks around the quotation management, for example, and it creates a lot of workload, a lot of burden, even from a financial perspective. So if we can remove this kind of friction, if we can accelerate the time to market of the quotation, if we can have a really full digital process from the catalog ingestion to the invoicing, imagine how qualitative can be the discussion afterwards, because now we still have to talk a lot about did you get my quotation? What is the price? When will it be available to me? Do you know when I will be delivered, for example? If all of the information is available on the platform, then we can really start talking about strategic initiative. How can we build the future together? So I don't think that artificial intelligence will make us less close to the partners. It's exactly the opposite. The more we will develop it, the more time we will have to develop qualitative discussion and to really build the future together.
We might have time for a drink and dinner to discuss something rather.
In France, it's very important, to have a very good glass of wine and talk about the business, of course.
Is there something you wish the partners would be focusing more on? And as you kind of look at them and you talk to them, I know they're all different, so it's difficult to generalize, but as you kind of have those discussions, is there something that you kind of, would wish the partners, or some piece of advice that you would give them that say, folks, you need to spend a little more time on this?
I don't think I'm the right person to give advice to my partners, because we are all on the same boat, all facing the same kind of difficulties. The problem with this deep transformation we are going through right now is to deal with the day-to-day operational issues we have, with the business pressure we have as well. So we need to deliver short-term outcome while transforming in the longer term. So the advice I would give is to try to combine both, and spend enough time, even 1-2 hours a day, to keep thinking about how the future will look like and how can we foster the right dynamic internally to have the right talent thinking about the way they can streamline workflows, the way they can create more values for their own partners. And it's easy to say, it's not easy to do, because it's about the purpose. We need to reassure all of the people about how the future will look like. Each time we are talking about artificial intelligence, you know that there is a fear behind it. Will we lose our job? Will we be less intelligent in the future because we will fully rely on artificial intelligence? What will be our added value? What about the enablement? So we really need to all think about it and see how we can, first of all, drive the right purpose. What is the storyline behind it? What do we want to get out of this artificial intelligence capacity?
So we started the conversation with what's happening in France today. We're kind of at the end of the year. As you look into 2026, what do you think will happen? What is your crystal ball telling you?
So in 26, for me, AI is like the way we were talking about cloud 10 years ago. We have talked a lot about cloud, and finally, between the time we have started to talk about cloud and the time we have seen concrete outcome from a business perspective, it took a while. I think that in 26, we will start, first of all, to see two motions. First of all, our partners, customers, and even ourselves being very much more concrete in the way we can leverage these AI technologies. And on the other hand, start seeing some real business opportunities around it. While so far we have seen some very big deals around AI, some solutions embedding NVIDIA, for example, but we didn't see in the SMB, in the mid-market area, we didn't see really the integration of these AI opportunities from a business perspective. And I hope that in 26 we'll start seeing it concretely.
Of course, another big part of this channel equation are the vendors themselves. There's many of them here, they have booths. Is there something that you wish they would understand about the channel in France and the partners in France a little bit more than they do today?
What they need to understand is that it's important for them as well to standardize their processes, because if they really want to keep benefit of all of these new platform or digital platform opportunities, they need to accompany us as well by providing us the right access to their data, by standardizing their own processes, breaking some silos so that we can really all together make it much more fluid. And the added value for them will come out of it as well.
All right. Hey, folks, you heard it here. France, it's a funny thing. They have a different word for everything, but they have the same issues we do. Hey, thanks for being here.
So we'll get into a little bit in 3 parts about what makes the VCF stack a great place for Kubernetes. First, we're going to go into our Kubernetes service, and I'll cover that here. In the following presentation, especially if you're watching us on YouTube, we're going to review applications being deployed into our environment. And then in the following section, we're going to talk about how our cloud model and it best enables your workloads and Kubernetes workloads in our stack here. And so, yes, we are at KubeCon. So what we are doing today is we are focusing on the VCF cloud and how the VCF cloud actually delivers Kubernetes. Now, I want to get a few things out of the way here. First of all, for all things Kubernetes, when you're dealing with VMware by Broadcom, for all things Kubernetes, those things all live now in the VCF division, right? And what I mean by that is the way you would deploy Kubernetes clusters, the way you would manage Kubernetes clusters at scale, and the way you're going to operate those are all a part of our VCF cloud, right? When we're thinking about VCF cloud, what we're talking about doing is we're thinking about delivering a cloud in your data center for our end users. Now, delivering a cloud in your data center has a couple of different changes when you compare like what's going to happen in your environment versus what you do when you go to hyperscaler, right? And really that's because there are a couple different personas that are playing out here. There's that persona who's in charge of building and managing the cloud. And then there are the actual users, the people who want to use your cloud, right? And so we have to think about all of those things. Now, luckily, we have a really good head start being VMware. We've got a great bit of networking, a great bit of storage, and our industry standard virtualization platform that make up that base layer of our stack. Now, we can deploy this in many different areas, including throughout our partners and at the edge, in telco spaces, and in your on-prem data centers, right? And functionally, we take that compute, storage, and networking, and via constructs in our stack, which we'll get into here in a little bit, we'll take those things and we'll actually leverage the underlying VMware infrastructure, the underlying VCF infrastructure to provide these additional services. So up top, you're going to see Kubernetes, virtual machines. We have a container service that I'm sure Jeremy's going to talk about in session 3 today. And we have many other services that actually help you deliver your applications here. Networking services, storage services, those sorts of things. So let's talk a little bit more about how the cloud admin enables the platform engineer to deliver Kubernetes and what VKS actually is. So VKS is fully conformant certified Kubernetes delivered in your data center. And I want to pause there and think about what we mean when we say fully conformant certified Kubernetes, okay? What this means is we're delivering you in your data center the ability to deploy Kubernetes clusters that will functionally equip you to run any application that's suitable for Kubernetes. Why is that important? Well, that's important because you may have applications that are running in other clouds somewhere else, right? You want to take that application, you want to make sure that application will run in your data center. So by delivering you fully conformant certified Kubernetes, you can be assured that if your app is running in maybe a public cloud provider somewhere, or maybe in some other Kubernetes distribution, that it will run on VKS in your stack. Now, you'll notice in this eye chart here, I've got a couple of Kubernetes clusters here. And that's great. What we actually get the ability to do with a couple of Kubernetes clusters here, right, is we're showing you that it's not just one Kubernetes cluster in your environment. This is a Kubernetes service. We deliver multiple Kubernetes clusters. When a user requests a Kubernetes cluster, they can get one out of your VCF infrastructure, right? These are all deeply integrated into the VCF substrate. And what I mean by that is like all of the C's that usually go into a Kubernetes cluster, CSI, CNI, CPI, those sorts of things. Those are all covered and integrated deeply within our stack so that when it comes to maybe a user kicking off an upgrade of their Kubernetes cluster, that the dependencies are just managed for you, right? You're not worried about, oh, is this version of that applicable with that part of my infrastructure? No, this is just managed for you as part of your VCF deployment. And we seamlessly integrate with GPU, storage, and the rest of our compute stack. You'll see that we rapidly deliver vSphere Kubernetes releases. A VKR or vSphere Kubernetes release is our way of conceptualizing what might be an operating system for a Kubernetes node and a version of a Kubernetes miner, right? We release VKRs typically within 2 months of when the upstream community drops a new version of Kubernetes, right? And so I think, we just had a release of VKR 3.5, and I think that's right about 2 months after the Kubernetes community launched this. Now, the reason why, yeah, go ahead.
I'm Guy Courier, Futurum Group. My mind is like maybe unhelpfully focused on service. Because we got a lot of Ks that are Ps, and here we got a K that's an S. So you have the blank KP and the blank KS. That's a service versus platform, right? So Nutanix has their NKP. It used to be called NKS. Before that, it was called DKS. Why service? I have an answer in my head that I like, but why call it a service instead of a platform? Or
well, this is a Kubernetes service that runs on our cloud. And our cloud has all kinds of things built into it that might actually be the things that you would consider that make up a platform. Examples. In the VCF cloud, you can run, we have the ability to do network isolation. We have the ability to provide you, coming in a future release here, object storage for your use cases. We have the ability to bring you data services, manage databases in our cloud. We have the ability to simply run a container in our cloud as a service, right? We have the ability to provide you virtual machines, obviously. If we're not doing that, we're not doing well. But we have the ability to provide you virtual machines in your cloud as a service as well. These are some of the base level components that we feel that you're going to have to add on to with other things to really build a platform experience. Now, here's the thing about platform. What we've found and what we think is happening here is we feel that like when people are using our VKS service, what they've told us is they said, hey, it would be great if you just had a Kubernetes substrate that my apps can run on. We have big opinions about the CI part of our process. And in a lot of cases, people have told us we have big opinions about CD in our stack as well, right? And so our goal is to provide a platform that can interact best with those sorts of capabilities. And so when we say service, I want you to think of something that is based on industry standard technology that enables you to leverage that capability. And then the second part that I want you to understand is that when we're thinking about actually leveraging this service, you can bring different components to bear on that stack. And we will manage that service for you through its life cycle, both bringing new versions of Kubernetes and helping you upgrade your app, as well as managing dependencies of things running in those Kubernetes, in that Kubernetes infrastructure.
So is your view that there's a broad platform engineering paradigm, or there's a broad operational paradigm? I think VMware used to call it SDDC or something along those lines. And this is an element, maybe a critical element, in that overall infrastructure capability that you are that you would reserve for the platform name.
Yeah, I would say so. And
good.
I think we break that up into a couple of key services, maybe like core services. Let's think of it this way. One is our VM service. You can build on top of that.
Yeah.
The other is our container service. We have this thing called vSphere pods that will just allow you to run a container. And then we have our Kubernetes service. We feel that most applications can be platformed in one way or another on those things, right? And we may work with partners on each of these areas to platform those applications accordingly. That's how we're thinking about this. But with regards to the service, we're going to manage the life cycle of those. We're going to help you operate those, and we're going to help you deploy those at scale across the globe in your VCF deployments. And that's our view of why we want to call it a service.
Is the VCF component, does VCF only offered as a cloud now?
As a cloud?
Yeah, because you said that the VKS is a service that runs on VCF cloud. So,
on the VCF cloud. VCF is a cloud. It's in your data center. Yep. So we're looking to be, we are looking to be in your data center, helping you where your workloads are in those data centers. Now, we certainly also leverage partners, like, right, we have this vast network of cloud service providers that will help you run VCF as well. So if you're looking for an experience across multiple areas with the same Kubernetes experience, because that's built into the box, you can leverage your relationships with our CSP partners to do that.
I just wanted to be clear. So VCF Cloud is just is VCF.
It's it's VMware Cloud Foundation, and it's the cloud in your data center.
This might be a nit, and I'm not sure if it's a smart question or not, but the word conformance came up with AI. So when you say conformant, are you talking about CNCF conformance for Kubernetes?
We are
certified, yeah.
We are certified Kubernetes. And certified Kubernetes means that we pass the upstream Kubernetes conformance tests.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so, like, most vendors will tell you we're certified Kubernetes. We heard that you talked about the AI thing a little bit earlier today, the new AI conformance thing that the CNCF has brought forward, that the community has brought forward. We're happy to be a part of that. We're one of the launch partners for that.
Good. Okay.
So again, we want this to be a Kubernetes stack that supports your workloads. We don't necessarily have an opinion about what workload should run there, but we want to make sure that this is aligned with what the community is delivering, so that these workloads are successful on our cloud.
So I'm trying to grok this. So the VMware Cloud Foundation, is that the underpinning for everything that VMware offers? Is it built on Cloud Foundry? Is it
VMware
Tanzu related?
It is unrelated to Tanzu. Tanzu is something that could run on top of VCF. The VMware Cloud Foundation, or VCF, is a set of previously built components that we have now put together into one offering and one thing that we can deploy to give you cloud services, right? And that includes that VCF includes our hypervisor. It includes our networking solution. It includes our storage solution. It includes all of the things that you would historically think about leveraging to automate and operate those things at scale. And most importantly, it ties all of those things together in one common life cycle experience. So previously, these were separate components. And the reason we're starting to talk about this as VCF is because we've put a lot of effort into making it one seamless experience to install everything that you need to get SDN, to get your software-defined storage, to get your hypervisor layer, to get all those things, so that we can now have the conversation about leveraging services. And those services are the VKS service, our container service, our VM service, our private AI services that we receive.
So where would you draw the line for the platform, or does it move?
I mean, I think it depends on...
You're talking about platform engineering and what operations is going to be focusing on to maintain and to orchestrate.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. I think it can kind of move. And the reason why it can kind of move, it really depends on what you mean by platform. I believe there's fundamental. Yes, I know. There's a set of engineers that are in charge of building the cloud substrate. These people are defining storage policy, networking VLANs, like the design of the compute infrastructure, and taking those things and putting them into server cabinets, or procuring that from a third party, right? Those sorts of people could be considered platform operators in some organizations, because they may have that extra duty with managing Kubernetes infrastructure. In fact, that's what we found. We found that some organizations put the onus of maintaining the infrastructure, or would like to put the onus of maintaining the infrastructure, on the infrastructure team, where they also have platform teams, right? And so here's where it gets a little bit muddy. We need to build a system that allows platform teams to manage the sets of services that compose their applications, right? So there's a team that's responsible for building the cloud, that ultimately gives you the spot where you're going to deploy your workloads in the cloud.
But you're not building VCF because it comes for you, right?
You're deploying VCF in your data center, and once it's deployed, you can then consume. And at that point, I would say there's a platform team that's responsible for helping you manage your Kubernetes infrastructure, the VMs, the load balancers, the networking that makes up your applications, right? Now that platform team probably only has access to a certain section of your infrastructure. Or maybe you have separate platform teams for separate business units. What we've had to do is we've had to build a model that allows people to consume and manage our infrastructure in ways across those separate teams.
And so, as you said, Tanzu would sit on top of this, as would VKS, and
Tanzu would sit on top of this. In fact, what Tanzu does, if you're leveraging the Tanzu platform, it's leveraging Bosch to deploy VMs, and those VMs are deployed on top of VCF. If you're looking to deploy Kubernetes, our Kubernetes infrastructure, our VKS service deploys Kubernetes, and that's all built on virtual machines, just like any other cloud does, right? And that's all deployed on VCF. It's all isolated with our networking constructs. It can be stored using our SDN, software-defined storage, sorry, vSAN in our stack. And from there, we have the ability to consume those things. Okay, let's talk just a little bit more about the VKS stack specifically. So in VKS 3.5, we shipped Kubernetes 1.34. And we did that within 2 months of the upstream community launching that, right? That's important because if you're leveraging another cloud provider out there, you're going to have workloads that may need that version that's available in that cloud. We're launching about with the same velocity that you're seeing from these other public cloud vendors out there. And so this aligns the VCF infrastructure to have that exact same sort of capability, that exact same sort of Kubernetes capability. Now, Kubernetes 1.34 in our stack will also come with 24 months of support, which is pretty nice. The Kubernetes community has a more limited support time frame for a version of Kubernetes. And so what we're doing is we're giving the applications that are running in your enterprise additional leeway on a version of Kubernetes. We've been told by our customers that upgrading is tricky enough in Kubernetes, and we need a certain amount of time on a version of Kubernetes for our workloads. So we support now version 1.34 with 24 months of support. But it doesn't stop there. With this release, we're saying that every Kubernetes miner that ships in our stack will have 24 months of support moving forward. So we'll give you the ability to make sure that your applications can appropriately be lifecycled with that 24-month support period. Now, we also integrated Kubernetes multi-cluster management directly into VCF in the stack. And this is right around the VKS 3.5 timeline. We did this in our VCF 9.0.1 release. So if you're deploying a version of VCF now, you will out of the box have Kubernetes enabled for you. You will out of the box have Kubernetes multi-cluster management enabled for you to leverage as well. And we built into VKS 3.5 a unified NR management system. You also heard about our Kubernetes AI conformance news at today's keynote, I believe. And this is where our stack is in alignment and now certified for the new AI conformance requirements that the Kubernetes community has passed.
And that includes the DRA?
What?
Does that include the DRA?
It does include DRA. So DRA is supportable in our environment.
Okay.
And we're doing further work.
Yeah, you have you have a whole other implementation. CPU manager, right?
Yeah.
But now you support that as well.
Yes, we support. Okay. Yes, we can support DRA as well. Okay. Kubernetes stack. Yep. All right. So we mentioned we're rapidly delivering new Kubernetes versions. This is kind of an eye chart, but the thing that I want to point out for you is that we ship versions of VKS, okay? And every version of VKS is going to at least support N-2 versions of Kubernetes, okay? The thing that I want you to take away from this chart, though, is that as you think about the version of Kubernetes you're going to run, there are things that need to be life-cycled in the background, or there are things that platform administrators may life-cycle on your behalf in the background, right? So a platform administrator might update the version of VKS for you. You should know as a user of the VKS stack, you'll have 24 months of support on that version of Kubernetes that you're running. Past that, you may need to upgrade the version of Kubernetes that your application's running on. All of this is delivered via our content delivery system in our stack. And all of this can be upgraded independently of the rest of the vSphere stack, the rest of the VCF stack. I bring that up because you do not have to log in as a VMware administrator somewhere in your stack to update vCenter or something like that to get a new version of Kubernetes. We ship the VKS versions independently of the VKS stack. And really, the goal of doing this was to quickly deliver this new version of Kubernetes for everybody. All right. So we have a comprehensive set of packages that can be installed in VKS. We've got two sets. We've got core packages, and those are at the bottom here. And the way I want you to think about core packages, these are the things that you functionally kind of need for a Kubernetes cluster to exist. You'll notice the networking stuff's in there, right? Like you got to have a networking plugin installed for Kubernetes to be useful. You'll note that I've got some auth stuff in there. You'll note that we've got things related to storage in our stack there. These things are going to be included and pre-installed and pre-enabled on all of your VKS releases. Okay? Then above that, we've got a set of standard packages. Now these are optional things that you could add to a VKS cluster to give you additional capabilities. And you're going to look through this list and you're going to see a lot of things that you're like, oh, I recognize these CNCF things, right? And really these are things that we feel that you need to add to a cluster to maybe gain additive value. And in many cases here, we've been asked by customers to say, hey, would you support a service mesh for us? Can you give us a service mesh that you support out of the box? So we said, sure. As long as you're running VCF, you can run Istio, and you can run that on our stack, and we'll support it. We'll support it down to the networking components in the stack, so your workloads have a service mesh to live with.
Can you run VKS without VCF?
Can you run VKS without VCF? It is available in VVF, but it's lesser. And what I mean by that is you don't get multi-cluster management. You don't get, for example, the Istio support in that stack. You get a very basic Kubernetes. So if you have VVF, which is our lower tiered SKU, you get access to Kubernetes and you can leverage it, but you miss out on multi-cluster management, you miss out on some of these packages, and you miss out on what Jeremy's going to talk about a little bit later, which is that cloud experience. Okay. So let's talk just a little bit about multi-cluster management in our stack. Included in VCF 9.0.1, we've bundled in multi-cluster management. And I think we're going to actually get a peek at that in our next session. So if you actually like a demo of that, jump over to that YouTube video. But when we think about the multi-cluster management capabilities, we're thinking about fleet-wide or the things that you have access to. Now remember, I'm telling you that we're leveraging VKS in our cloud as a service, which means we give users access to leverage our cloud, and they can vend Kubernetes clusters or virtual machines or containers, networks, load balancers, whatever they need to deliver their application from our infrastructure set. The multi-cluster management capability allows those users to manage the Kubernetes clusters that they have access to, right? So it allows folks to ultimately manage and lifecycle these clusters. It allows them to manage and introspect the workloads running on these clusters. It allows them to manage security and compliance policy within these clusters, leveraging Open Policy Agent as a part of this. It also allows you to protect your data. And so we're using Velero under the covers today as a set of APIs for Kubernetes cluster data protection. And we are actually, if you run by the booth, you can catch a demo of what's coming in a future release, which is actually us backing up our clusters to our own object storage. So Velero supports any object store on the back end. We, in a future release, have announced that we're going to ship an object store. We have the ability to natively plug this up and give you a full end-to-end solution for data protection for your Kubernetes clusters. It's really in alignment with what the community expects here.
This is Calvin Hendricks Parker. Is this a standard part of VCF? If you buy VCF, VKS comes as part of this package?
Comes with it. So does the multi-cluster management. So does the 24-month support for each of those versions of Kubernetes. So does basically all of these things that we've been talking about. These are just bundled in to VCF. Also, those other things that I were talking about that make up the cloud, and Jeremy's going to talk about this in session 3, if you're watching the stream. These are all components that make up that will make up the cloud. So the VM service, the vSphere pod service that allow you to run containers, the VKS service, the networking service, the load balancing service, the volume service, all of those things. They're all just included as a part of VCF. It's a big difference between a virtualization platform and a self-service cloud platform, which gives you access to all of these sorts of things. And that's really the shift that we've made. We're still relying on that vSphere infrastructure to provide world-class, best-in-class virtualization of all the things, your storage, your networking, and compute. But what we're giving you on top of that is this set of services that we've never really provided before in a consumable fashion for your end users.
So do you get Tanzu with it as well?
Tanzu is a different thing, and the reason why I had the disclaimer at the beginning, I'll go back to that. All the Kubernetes stuff is a part of VCF. Tanzu is about developers and delivering actual code to production, and they do that using a platform that's based on Cloud Foundry today.
But doesn't it sit on top of VCF?
It can totally sit on top of VCF.
But it doesn't have to.
It doesn't necessarily have to, right? We of course want it to sit on top of VCF as the VCF division, right? And we're happy to run those workloads. But you know that is not something that is included as a part of VCF out of the gates.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, and then we have some simplified Kubernetes operations with integrated monitoring. We have the ability to show you what's running in your Kubernetes clusters as well as how things are performing as a part of the stack. And we want to give you the ability to do those exact same things with your VKS clusters. And so we're going to give you details into how workloads are performing, how control planes are performing, how many objects exist and the state of those objects, all available in operations. Then we have workflows for configuring these should your end users want to get to these. Now that said, you might have said, but Timmy, I saw Prometheus and those sorts of things on an earlier slide. This is just an opinion of something that comes with our cloud out of the box. You get this. If you have a different set of tools for logging, for monitoring that are a part of your stack, you know, we're not opinionated. Bring your tools. Feel free to leverage your tools on our stack. Again, we're CNCF certified Kubernetes, right? Which means any workload designed for Kubernetes is going to run there. And with that, I'm almost out of time.
Can I sneak a quick question in there?
You can while I get my demo prepped.
Perfect.
Just want to show you.
If Tanzu is really targeted toward developers getting applications into production, what am I getting into production on VKS?
Well, so they're targeted for delivering applications into production on top of Cloud Foundry, right? And so there's
not coming from developers.
Well, I mean, they could be they can be from developers. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, there's workloads that are just designed for Kubernetes today. There are developers that have their own sets of tools.
Right.
Maybe they're running their own development tooling. They're leveraging something like Harness to deliver things.
Right. Maybe talking more like something like if I want min.io deployed with a Helm chart, like this is a good place to do this.
If you want, yeah, you can absolutely deploy any Helm chart on our clusters. We're no limits there. Yeah.
Okay.
Or if your developer simply has a Kubernetes-centric workflow, which many do for delivering their applications, and they've already built that framework, we can host that for you here. And I just want to give you a quick view of our creation flow. Here's our self-service portal that you're seeing access, and this is the quick way of doing it. You see that I have the services on the left, and here I'm clicking Create a new VKS cluster. This is the default configuration flow, and functionally what we're getting access and provisioning clusters to our project that we've been given access to. You'll see I already have a Kubernetes cluster deployed here, and I just created a new one. You'll see the older ones on Kubernetes 1.33 and the new ones on Kubernetes 1.34. And that's really the standard flow for creating things. We also have a flow that allows you to create workloads in a more custom way. And really that's what we're going to show here. And the thing that I want you to take away from this is we can configure just about everything about our clusters. Under the covers here, we're leveraging Upstream Cluster API, and here we're defining a cluster class that Cluster API can leverage. We're also defining what version of Kubernetes we ultimately want to run. And as this goes along, I just want to call your attention to the thing on the right-hand side, which is the Kubernetes resource YAML. Every object created in the VCF cloud is leveraging our API, which is declarative in nature. We'll get into that in session 3 a little bit more. But I want you to note that we're actually building that YAML that defines this cluster that we're building here as we click through this. So if you're someone who does not want to use a UI, you're someone you want to check in code to Git repo somewhere that defines your Kubernetes cluster, you can do that. And you can use Argo CD, which we provide, to track that and actually manage your infrastructure's code deployments, right?
Are there Terraform providers to do this too?
So we're using Kubernetes custom resources. We absolutely have Terraform providers, but Terraform has a great Kubernetes provider. And as such, and I point that out, I answer the question this way because the point is, like, just about everything understands how to deal with a Kubernetes custom resource. And everything in the VCF cloud is defined as a Kubernetes custom resource. More in session 3 on that.
Perfect.
Right? And so what you'll actually be able to see here, we're creating a node pool here. These are the worker nodes that run in our environment. And here you'll see we're using Ubuntu 22.04. Shout out to Canonical, who's our new partner here. Canonical is helping us deliver, the #1 cloud operating system as the Node OS is a part of our stack. Here you'll see we're defining details about our node pool, including storage volumes. We're including labels, taints, the basic things that you would leverage for Kubernetes. And this is all done via the UI for you. Here you click Finish. We look at the node pools here, and we click Next, which allows us to review and confirm, and we finish, and the deployment goes. Again, we can introspect the YAML on the right-hand side. This YAML's been updated with all of our selections. We click Next, and it deploys the cluster for you. When I say deploys the cluster for you, what I mean is it deploys that cluster assuming you have a set of resources that your overall cloud admin has given you access to, right? So we are a user of the cloud, and we have access to a set of resources there. And we'll get into that more a little bit later in the session.